All right, I think we're live. Hello, greetings, and welcome everybody. Yes, I totally stole that intro from one of my favorite teachers. I just want to say thank you so much for everyone for joining in. I've got a really cool lineup of people once again, and a whole new bunch of questions, bunch of different topics, related, unrelated, all sorts. And I just want to drop in a little bit of a thing and say, you know, one of the great treasures I've taken away from, I'll just use initiation into hermetics as a base point, is that there are things in my life that I really enjoy doing. And these practices have essentially increased the amount of joy that these things bring me. They've given me new angles and vistas to appreciate these things. And it's opened up new doors for things as well. And so I just want to say, you know, this whole event that we're doing here, for myself anyway, is to share the joy and the successes and ways to basically enjoy life more, you know, and explore. You know, I'm an explorer. I love it so much. But anyway, once again, thank you so much. Let's get cracking here, because I got a whole bunch of people lined up here that can't wait to jump on here and share their many wisdoms. And so let's see, what do we got? Right. Okay. So once again, from the we're bringing in Mr. Philip Harris Smith.
Hello.
Hello, sir. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, actually. Had a nice cup of tea, sitting on the sofa, chatting with everyone. It's all good.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you so much for joining us once again. And how far away is the book, sir?
Well, it's about 95% finished. I've just got to, put some pictures in and tighten up some of the explanations. And I'm very, very pleased with how it's gone, because I've tested it all out practically. Can I just quickly explain the basic thesis of it?
Please go for it.
Right. Well, as many people may already know, the Enochian language that Dee and Kelly received, if you speak it and you aren't interested in any kind of spirituality, you can sometimes get a wonky effect, or even minor psychic issues, even if you're a lay person. So it's an automatically evocatory language. And the system itself has some quite powerful regions so you can explore. And my approach was, and is, to consider that a bottom-up thing. It just naturally occurs. Whereas, of course, Barden's hermetics you could characterize as being top-down. You do all this training and you work really hard, and it realizes certain attainments. And the whole point about what I'm writing is to amalgamate the two. So you've got the top-down, really, really solid discipline from Barden's works, and this automatic bottom-up effect that you can get if you work the Enochian system. And that's the essence of what I'm writing, really. In a very, very broad terms, that's what it's about.
Oh, wow. That sounds really interesting, man. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, that kind of synopsis there is absolutely bang on. So, you know, I think that for myself with energy healing and what I do, you know, bringing in the Barden framework and seeing how, you know, how the complementary aspects of, like, wow, this is really just taking, like,
well,
I said,
that's interesting. There are some healing angels, for example, that could be of interest if you are a healer. I mean, there's lots of angels for different things, but specifically, I've worked with those, so I can certainly say that has a good effect.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Okay, let's keep things moving here. I'm going to bring in, let's see, we have Tanya and James. I've got one here. So hello, Tanya. How are you doing, sister?
Hello. Hi. It's wonderful to be here. Really great. Thank you. It's so great to hear you talking about hermetic, Enochian hermetics as well. Phil's been working on. It's a really amazing book, actually, and I think it's unique. I've never actually seen anyone look at Enochian and Barden's work and actually bring it together in the way that he's done, and it's completely unique. I think everyone will be quite amazed when they see this, and it also allows such with work with Enochian can be very difficult to navigate around. The books aren't very clear, and it's full of lots of complications and very involved. So I think what Philip has done is really sort of bring it down to a very logical and concise approach to it. And I think for those who maybe are not more Bardnist than Enochian will appreciate it, but also the Enochian people will be able to see the elements within that as well and bring it in. And also he also combines with obviously working with the Kabbalah as well, and with the keys that he's found, and has really brought things sort of into a different sort of dimension, if you like, into awareness. I think it's absolutely, yeah. So I think it's a bit of a gem, this one. It's a little hidden secret that Philip has brought to us. So it's very exciting. So yeah.
Oh, wonderful! What a man! How can you fail with someone like with Tanya on your sidelines there, Phil?
Well, I mean, I'm pleased that I've been able to explain things in a. No, you see, the thing with Barden is he's so concise, and it was such a breath of, I don't know about other people, but it's such a breath of fresh air when you first read him. If if you come from a ritual magic background, and that kind of drove me. I obviously I don't have the same kind of literary style as Barden. It's been translated into English as well, but I wanted to be clear and concise, and I'm really pleased that I've managed to do that. And I'm really pleased with what Tanya's just said. I'm a bit embarrassed actually, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, how wonderful, wonderful. Okay, all right. So I'm going to bring, let's see. So joining Tanya on the screen there is James from perseusarcaneacademy. Hello, James. How are you, sir? Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Phil. Hello, everyone. Good to be here. I'm well. I'm ready and raring.
It's great. Got any interesting little anecdotal stories from the previous week, maybe relevant or not, or just curiously interesting that you'd like to share?
No amazing stories, no angel visitations, sadly. Just cracking on with Perseus version 3, and my own personal practice. Sorry guys, nothing miraculous happened this week.
Perseus version 3. Now that sounds intriguing. Can you give us a snapshot of that, or are you not allowed to reveal anything yet?
Well, as I'm doing it, I will give myself permission to share a little bit. Basically, we're just keeping up with the times or trying to keep ahead of the times, using, not using technology for the sake of it, but using all the new updates and the technology that we can to help make what we do a lot smoother, a lot more intuitive, and to really remove any barriers from learning, so that people really, everything they feel they might need or to have at hand as they're learning with one of our teachers is there, and without it being a lot of buttons to click or anything like that. But it's very intuitive. So that's what we're trying to do right now.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think like the UI, the user interface. I tell you what, there's some great teachers out there, and they're using very complex platforms to promote their stuff, and it can be quite off-putting sometimes, especially across different devices. So yeah, the more you can simplify it, make it more intuitive. I appreciate that as well. I use a Macintosh because it's really good for, I'm just a simple man. That's what I'd say.
Exactly. But, to make it a beautiful experience as well. So it's entirely new from the ground built up.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so excited. I mean, I saw the second generation of the Perseus platform come, and that was beautiful too. So I'm really excited, man. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to keep moving along here. So I'm going to bring in Mr. David Paul Coleman. Hello, David. How are you, sir? Thank you for joining us.
Hi there. Hello, everyone. I'm good. Thank you for inviting me. Good to be here.
You're most welcome. And I just want to say, we're having a very interesting solar event happen at the moment. And I'm wondering if you have any comments on that.
Yes, there is a lot of stuff going on basically in the sky at the moment to comment on, and that's just like one of those features. But I don't know in particular what solar event you're referring to.
Oh, there's a geomagnetic storm of some.
Right. Yeah, there's been a lot of that. Yeah, and there's also been an eclipse recently. I wondered if you were talking about that too, because that was a pretty intensive eclipse. Yes. Well, astrology doesn't really have much to say about things like sunspots or solar flares or anything like that, right? Don't know why, but it's just not part of the law. But we do obviously have a lot to say about eclipses, and this last one that's happened has been I would say a resetting of things in the sky, like a shuffling of the cards, shuffling of the deck, and the setting of things up for a new new patterns to begin emerging, right? So it's like an initiatory eclipse in that sense, and it's like a beginning of things, an opening of things, and that's been quite important, right? Solar activity is obviously very important, right? It affects us, right, physically as well as astrally and mentally as well. And the sun is, put it this way, the sun is like for us humans, a physical manifestation in our physical universe of the inner star within us, in each of us, the inner light within all beings. That brings the spark of consciousness, the spark of aliveness, the spark of presence. And so activity on the surface of the sun is a direct mirror of activity on that level too in human beings. We're witnessing it, we're observing it, there's an observer effect going on. That observer effect is entangled with our consciousness in this case, and changes in the human consciousness that's happening at this time. It is bubbling, things are happening, there is energy, there are sunspots, there are things happening on its surface that are visible to those who are observing it, right? And I think we do see that, actually. We see a global shift happening.
Thank you. Well, what a wonderful explanation. Yeah, and absolutely. You know, we are certainly in very interesting of times, and you know, I'm always curious to see how these solar events play in, because solar events don't necessarily get a lot of attention, except when people are looking outside, going, "Hey, look, there's a thing going on." You know, but they obviously can, on top, at a very physical level, play with technology, but also intrinsically within ourselves. Wonderful, thank you for that. All right, I'm going to bring in, here he is, Mr. Bob Smith from 60 Skills. Hello, Bob. How are you, sir? Thank you for joining us. No, put your yeah, no sound, brother. You're not muted. Where's Bob? Hang on, let's try this one. Oh, check your settings there, brother. I'll keep talking. So sign language? No, probably in the settings. That's all good. So now I just want to say too, so what we've got is I've got a lineup of questions here. So just shout out, Bob, mate, when you think you got it sorted. I've got a lineup of questions focused around, for the first hour, focused on astrology, on initiation into hermetics, and also I've got a little gimmick that I like to put into the live streams about things. Bob, can we hear you? Nope. Hang on. Try that now. Nope. Still quiet. Try the little cog at the bottom of the screen there, brother. Right. So yeah. So I've got a lineup of questions here. So we're going to start off with basically, what was a notable moment in the early stages of training, initiation into hermetics, that really caught your attention? And I have to say, for myself, you know, I'm still working through the initiation process of the first book. And, you know, I've talked to some people who are doing this for 20, 30 years. And a lot of people will say, yeah, sometimes you don't really actually finish the first book. It's constantly a work in progress. And, you know, something that I've noticed is that after many years of being a musician, using that, nope, you're still quiet, Bob. After many years of being a musician and using that as a concentration development exercise, and then not being a musician, the initiation process has reminded me that, or it has brought into my attention the value of concentration exercises, just as a very early point. But I'm going to put this out there, and I'm going to pose this question first to Mr. Philip Harris Smith. Oh, no, not that question there. No, not that one. This one here. Oh, here's Bob. Hang on. Hello, Bob.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, brother, you're coming through loud and clear, sir.
Sorry about that.
No, you're all good. You're all good. Okay, so Bob, sir, one of the busiest man on the scene. How are you, brother? Are you well?
I'm well. I'm doing all right. Everything's going pretty good. Been a course business a little bit, so hopefully we should have some online teasers for that in the next week or two. And that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. You're pumping out stuff left, right, and center. So if you, I've got the website there, and his Facebook's very active, and YouTube. But we'll do some more plugging for people's sites and where you can find them and socials and things a bit later. But I'm going to crack into the first question here, which was, what was a notable moment in the early stages of training initiation into hermetics that really caught your attention? And I brought in a pretty lightweight one of just the value of concentration. And there's some other ones which are, earth-shattering type things, experiences for myself anyway. But I want to pass this one on to Mr. Philip Harris Smith. Philip.
Well, the first really notable thing was the direct experience of Akasha. Now, I'd done before that, for example, I'd done, some basic Golden Dawn stuff with the Tatvik symbols, the Indian symbols. You use them as elemental doorways. And one of them is an Akasha symbol. And I'd had what I thought was Akashic experience by using that symbol as a doorway, going through it, that kind of thing. But when I actually got to do work directly feeling and working with Akasha via Barden's training, it was a completely different deal. And in fact, I would go as far as to say that whilst it may be possible to work with Akasha via the Golden Dawn technique, I thought I was, but I didn't. It was something else. It was Akasha-ish, but it wasn't. It was still in the treasure house of images, really. And it was just that direct input of working with the Akasha. Once you've got the balance and it starts to manifest, and going along with that, with being at the center, the center of everything, and the Akasha thing at the center, all that kind of stuff. That was, and it was a constellation of things. I'll try to keep it concise. The center point of things as well, all that constellation of realizations that seemed to gel at a certain point in Barden's training. That's when I knew, I suspected it, but that's when I knew for a fact that Barden stuff is a different deal to what I'd been working with before. So that would be, the Akasha, really, the whole thing like that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Absolutely. That was, I've done a little lucid dreaming and out of body stuff and that in the past. And then this equilibrium Akasha depth point thing. Wow. That was something new and different. And so thank you very much. Yeah. I found the thing. Let's keep going with that. So I'm going to ask Mr. David Paul Coleman. Would you like to comment, please? Oh, you're on mute, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot. There's a couple of things actually that I can think of. One from step 4 and one from earlier than that, right? I can't remember at the moment. I'd have to look that up. So the one from step 4 is that we're developing these magical faculties through this training. We're connecting with the elements, and then we're basically equilibrating them astrally and so on. We're doing like a step-by-step process as we're going through this training, and we're acquiring these magical faculties as we progress through the steps, as signposts for our progress, right? That's what they do, right? When you can manifest some of these magical faculties, like for example, step 4, mental transference into objects and people, then you know that this is a sign. You've reached a signpost in your initiation that says you've completed this part of step 4, right? So the magical faculties are blossoms and flowerings of your work, but they're not the true prize. You move on from that to the next step, right? The true prize is the progress of initiation going on and on. And there was a moment in step 4 when I realized, oh, all of these magical faculties that I'm developing and that people will develop when they do these exercises are actually all innate, normal, human things that we do all the time. It's just that they are undeveloped, and we are largely unaware that that is what they are. And for me, it was at step 4, the realization that I had been doing mental transference into other human beings all my life, but I had just not been doing it so deeply and with so much concentration and so much development and training. I was just doing it superficially, but I was still doing that. And it was just because I was an empathic person that I was doing that naturally, because really the mental transference into other people and other things, other objects, is all about empathy. And your ability to empathize with something is your ability to mentally transfer your consciousness, your awareness into it. It's as simple as that. And I'd just been doing that all my life. And the realization that I've been doing it all my life was a key that sort of awakened in me this realization that, oh, all of these magical faculties are things that all human beings are doing all of the time. They just don't know they're doing it, and they haven't developed that ability. And they're not all that mysterious after that. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was earlier, probably early in step 2, or even in step 1, it probably was, when I realized that, yeah, it was in step 1. I can remember now. I can remember the connection I made when I realized that the system, the structure of the system that Bardner created, while it reads like amazing in print, right? You just like it's been said, you read this work and you're impressed. If you've read any other occult works anywhere in the world that have been written by anyone, you're struck by how this is the voice of experience primarily that's speaking to you. And so there's the reading of it, right? But then there's the practice of it. And the practice of that reveals that the system is so beautiful. It's so perfectly structured. It's so well engineered, like it's built by a mechanic, because it was. And he was like, I love to tinker with his car, right? So you see, you realize things like, oh, the step 1 exercises where you're practicing emptiness of mind are helping you with the step 1 physical exercises, which are telling you to be present in the moment. Because when you are present in that state of emptiness of mind, you are present in the moment at the same time. And you can then carry that out of that practice more into your daily life, the more you develop it, right? And all throughout initiation into Hermetics, you see this structure where each step is built to enhance not just the other parts of that step, the other aspects of that step, and to work with it and to be used with it in creative ways as well, once the magician figures how to do that. But also each step beyond that works with the steps below it, and so on in a continuous way, that it only really comes out in practice. You only really get this, you only really get the elegance of this system in practice. But all of these parts work together so perfectly well, and so beautifully for the practitioner, that it's something that you don't, it's something that I don't see talked about very much, right? That this system is very interactive. All of the parts are interactive. And that's why it's a very, very solid ascent.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. What a great response, man. I tell you, we're on fire this morning. Okay. Well, I'm going to throw the hot potato to Tanya from Falcon Books Publishing. Tanya, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, very interesting. I actually very concur with what David said, and had a very similar experience as well. Yeah, for me, I was definitely working with the mind, working with the void meditation really had a huge impact. Also, I'm a very practical person, so I like to see things working, and for me, hermetics is about how can I use it in the real world? How does it work? And so for me, like what you saying with using with concentration, it really helps to sharpen your mind. You also being present within the day, which is, I think, is so fundamental, and it's something I've written about a lot, is the influence of the subconscious mind and how that affects your everyday living, and how people are asleep in the day, and to be waken up and to be aware and to be conscious, then you can enter into the power of that day and actually be able to live and react within your day within a present mind, rather than actually being subjected to the influences of your subconscious or subtle influences around you. So for me, that was a huge step for me, and to sort of go also to, when I started experience as well, go beyond the mind. And that to me was quite profound, when you can start observing the mind and realizing it's not you, and you're like, well, who the hell am I? What is this? Well, I've just forgot this program going on here, and it's not me. And for me, that was quite a revelation, to sort of break out of that mold. Also, secondly, like with David, I think steps 1, step 4 as well, working with the elements. I used to work as a teacher, so I don't know if also Philip, if you've ever used it in this way, because your teaching experience, but with students as well, sometimes I would work with the elements. So I'd use the energies or the influences of the elements as well to work with the class. So if I had a particularly very energetic class, maybe I'd want to calm it down a bit, or if I needed a bit of fire to kind of get the class going, I'd use those sort of run those energies through me, and then I would project it into the classroom. And that's also wonderful as a way to experimentation view, but on a practical level of using these elements. As well, I'd like to talk about Bob's 60 skills course, because his approach as well to step 4 is absolutely, and working with the 4 regions is absolutely ace. It's brilliant. It's really, I love one with Bob stuff. It's really concise and it's very clear. There's no, should I do this or should I do that? And it works, and I think that's why a lot of people get a lot of success very quickly with Bob, because of that reason. So with his, I used his approach with the 4 regions, and very, very, very powerful. Yeah. And I think as well, going back to equilibrium, elemental equilibrium, which is incredibly important for this path. And if you don't have that, then you really shouldn't be doing Bardens, because it will just mess you up. It will knock you over all over. And I always think that Barden's approach is IIH is more like a university entrance. I think usually a lot of people who go into Barden's probably been meditating for 15 years or a long time before they even get to Barden's, because or at least have experience within different magical systems, because to jump into it as I think for somebody who's never done any practice before, it's tricky. It's very difficult. You'll probably give up, or find it too difficult, or it'll maybe do kind of jump around a bit. And I think so for me, I think in terms of equilibrium, step 4 and 4 regions is like amazing, and it really just balances you out completely, and a quick way as well, rather than obviously we keep on growing and developing ourselves, but it energetically, it kind of wipes out all those different all the influences that we're getting that can affect us in our soul mirrors or our everyday life, for me. So, and you just, with a complete sort of harmony. I don't know if Bob, if you'd like to kind of talk a little bit as well about your approach to the step 4. I wonder if you could sort of explain a little bit to people from what you're doing.
Sure. You know, I owe this technique to Mark Rasmus, so let me be super clear about that. You know, equilibrium is a funny thing. You know, most people walk around in one state of disequilibrium or another pretty much all the time. And stacking the elements within the body, you know, fire in the head, air in the chest, water in the abdomen, earth in the legs, is a lot like hitting the reset button. And the first time I did this was actually through a ritual system, through the Golden Dawn. And I had at the time an outside practice area that I don't have anymore. And the charge there was built up pretty well. And I remember doing this and I hit the ground. You know, I'd been practicing lots of these fiery, very electric kind of practices from Tantric Buddhism and the martial arts for years. And all of a sudden, everything balanced out and boom, my body got confused. So it said, all right, we're taking a nap. The next thing I know, I wake up on the ground. And then when I learned this from Mark through Barden's system, it became useful. Because listen, ritual's great. You know, you can do a lot of interesting things with the ritual, but it takes time. The stacking of the elements, I got good enough at that I could just do it sitting in a chair in class. And that ability to spontaneously hit equilibrium, particularly when other people were stressed around me, was really interesting. You know, now again, I had to remember to do it when everybody was, you know, going bananas, but it resulted in a really odd scenario where all of a sudden, all right, you're calm in the midst of turmoil and you're looking around, observing your environment in a way that normally, because listen, everybody here is very empathic. I mean, if you weren't, you wouldn't be doing magic. Okay, fine. So for people like us in particular who have that tendency to be empathic all the time and absorb the kind of energy of the crowd, and you know, it's easy to get carried away by that. Just the ability to hit the pause button on that for a moment, kind of like what David was talking about, and go, oh, okay, this is what's really happening. It was really an amazing gift. You know, and again, I can't claim any particular creativity on this. I just took what Mark gave me and kind of put it together in a way that was easily accessible. But yeah, the ability to do that upon command is where, to me anyway, magic really hits the road. You know, okay, now I've got something useful that I can do with this that solves a problem. And that's where I think more people would be interested if they realized that was even a possibility for them. But I'm super happy you got something great out of it, Tanya. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Man, that was great. Thank you. And Bob, we've got you on the honk there. Do you want to have a look at the question? Have you got something to add there?
Yeah. Something that I missed out a lot on my early training that I only really started to revisit in the last few years when I got interested in alchemy, particularly after a series of conversations with Philip here. The early part of the book where they talk about the magic of water and charging a bottle of water or a glass of water or whatnot. Everything in Barden's system works from the Akashic to the mental to the astral very quickly, very well, very repeatably. But I used to spend a ton of time holding posture and doing all these other things in an effort to drive the energy into the physical. Until I started charging a bottle of water for 15 minutes before I engaged in a given practice. And then I would drink that. And then about 10 minutes into the practice would really hit hard. Now, whether that's a process of intention or astral energy permeating your cells or whatever that is, once I figured that out, practice became much more intense and much more time efficient. And there are a lot of gems like that in Barden's books where it'll just be mentioned once, right, in this kind of offhand manner, and you might miss it. And for me, in the early stage, the importance of charging something, then eating it, that rite of Eucharist business, to carry the rest of the practices forward, ended up being really important and something that was super easy to glance over. So I would encourage anybody, whatever step you're on, whatever technique you're working on, meditate, charge a glass of water regarding that technique for 10 or 15 minutes before you start practice. And you're going to find that if you drink that and then go into your practice is going to work much better than it would otherwise. And it was curious because it's true of all the techniques, whether it's mental or energetic. It's a really interesting thing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Great information. Appreciate it. James, you're up, sir. How would you like to comment?
Cool. So many good things already said. Yeah, I think for me, multiple things stood out. First of all, for step one would be the different degrees of vacancy, obviously. So obviously people will struggle for years. Maybe, did I get vacancy? Was that a fault? Was it really empty? But I think the thing is with vacancy of mind is that as you progress, it's one step forward, it's two steps back, or it's two steps forward and one step back, because as your vacancy increases, so does your awareness. So your awareness of far off thoughts also becomes better at spotting these things forming before they actually manifest before your mind and become a thought. So there is this thing of, you get better at spotting things, so therefore you get better at doubting your results, possibly, depending upon your personality. So for a lot of those people questioning themselves, they've probably already got the required result for them to move on, but instead they stay and doubt themselves because they can see these things forming on the peripheral. So that's one thing I noticed in my own practice with vacancy. And also with vacancy, I did a course in, I think it was 2012 in Europe. And it was a fascination, mesmerism, and presence course from a European lineage. Tanya and I did this. And one of the things there was a thing called presence. And it was one of the healing modalities of that practice. And very simply, it's like, if you just take a survey of your mind and your current state right now, and with all the things going on, and it probably feels very still. And then with these presence exercises, you would then you would increase your awareness of the texture of the moment, and get to a different stage of silence and awareness and presence. So you'd get to know the degrees of where you are in your day, that you don't just get silent, you don't just get still, you don't just get aware. There's a depth to this, and there's a graduation to this. So that in my early stages was really interesting, bringing it into Barden's, because I'm like, oh, okay, there's vacancy and there's vacancy. It's not just vacancy. There's a degree. It's an ongoing journey into that stillness. So that was one thing. Next part was the step 2 exercises with the visualization. Is that myself, I'm not a natural visualizer. I'm not someone who sees multicolor, technicolor, IMAX quality images in front of my eyes, and I never did. So for me, and I was also even told by some teachers, oh, due to your astrology, you'll never be able to do this, you know. But thankfully, my personality takes that as an invitation rather than something to quit on. So yeah, the visualization exercises, depending on who you are and how your mind works and the way you see the world, took me years really for me to actually get what people call visualization. I think in the mental, the clarity. So I would say with that taught me, you know, regardless of where you're starting with those visualization exercises and your experiences, don't think you can't ever get there. It just requires you to not give up. So I'm still improving my clarity now. 15 years on from when I started, it's still getting better. So, but it took a long time of getting nothing before I got that progress to happen. The other thing I'd say is, yeah, I think everyone's mentioned step 4. Step 4 is a kind of a goalpost or a stage where you're moving from the beginning bits into the intermediate bits, and depth point is obviously a huge part which comes into the next stage. But from the equanimity, you're sometimes then dropping into depth point. So once you're doing step 4 and step 5, I would do the regions, and then I would drop into the depth point in the solar plex and go on journeys there. So that really started to bring in, this is now becoming real. You know, this is not just some mental gymnastics. This is now becoming an experiential thing that I didn't have before. So that was awesome. The final thing I will say is that what I found is that as I was reaching these stages or experiences, what was so useful was using the rituals, the hand gestures, to then anchor these experiences. Because I didn't want to, you know, I'm a bit lazy. I don't want to go through the stages of trying to work my way back up again. So to then have these experiences and then to anchor these to specific hand gestures so that I can get back to them much easier. And then I can have that as an energy signature to get back to the state and then increase the potency of that experience and then anchor it again and so on. So this is a method I use to keep on moving and keep on moving quickly so that I could regain my previous experience and go deeper.
Wow, another great response, man. Audience, send us through more of your questions, please. And on that, I have got a question. Thank you, James. Now, I'm just going to post this up from the audience, and anyone that would like to comment, we won't go. We don't have to go all the way around, but if you want to, by all means. So we have a question. Ryan asks. Ryan does YouTube. I love that. Ryan asks, how do you all know you were ready to move on to subsequent exercises or subsequent steps? So looking for the internal cues, or like, okay, I'm satisfied, I'm ready to step forward now, depending on whether you're using a linear, holographic, or a mix of the both as far as your learning model goes. I'll just put this out there. So would anyone like to comment on this one?
Do you mind if I
go for it?
The thing with, if you look at, obviously there are lots of really good ways that people are working with the Barden corpus. So I'm just going to stick to Barden's initiation into hermetics here. You can see the stages in it and how they overlap and how they verify to you that you are ready to progress. For example, one of the things that we've all been talking about is the early stages, and then you go on and you start getting the depth point and the akasha and, you know, all that kind of stuff. You're not going to get that if the elements aren't in balance. So in other words, you won't be able to do the akasha work if you haven't balanced the elements in the earliest steps, which is what Barden points out. And then later on, the first time Barden talks about any real hazard, as far as I remember, initiation into hermetics, is when you start working with the fluids. If you haven't balanced, to use a psychological model, unresolved unconscious complexes can mushroom with all this extra energy. He doesn't say that, but that's how I interpret what he means. And you can do yourself a mischief because you haven't balanced, and all of a sudden there's this extra throughput, and you're out of balance, and it can be quite. But you can, and then he says, go back and redo just the basic stuff, the elemental balancing. If there's a, so you can see in Barden where each ability verifies the previous and the next. So you've got the elemental balance leading to the Akasha work, the intuition, the Akasha principle revealing itself to you, and all of a sudden you're getting a lot more input from divine providence. You'll get a good feeling about whether you're balanced enough now to start with the fluids. And then naturally, once you start working with, I'm just picking parts of it, it's much more comprehensive. But naturally, once you finish working the fluids and you're really solid with the fluids, you might be starting to think really, really properly about the Godhead work then. So within Barden's initiation into Hermetics, you've got a self-diagnostic, which he points out, and which I would say is correct in practical terms as well. Because if you are having, there was a point where I'd been working with Akasha, but then it was going off. So I went back and did the elemental work, and the Akasha started to be more accessible again. I'd had an unpleasant life event, and it had knocked me out of kilter. So I'd lost my balance, and the Akasha was kind of fading on me. So I went straight back down to the earlier steps and just got stuck into them. And then that then brought the Akasha. Do you see what I mean? Hopefully you do anyway. But that would be what I would aim to say. If you obviously with material you bring into Barden, I can't talk about that, but I can see that there are some very positive results from that stuff, just from direct observation of folks that do it. I can only stick to the Barden sort of paradigm, and you can see how it self-checks as you work through it, and how you can quickly identify if you need to go back and do extra work because of the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, if you see what I mean. But yeah, that would be my answer to that. I hope I've been able to explain that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for that. Very, very, very makes perfect sense to me, and hopefully everyone else picks up on that too. Would anyone else like to comment on this? Yep, go for it, Bob.
What I would say is, piggybacking kind of on what Philip had to say, don't confuse proficiency with this unobtainable goal of mastery. I have to go back and revisit earlier exercises all the time, particularly the watching the thoughts exercise, because some of I have a busy life in the real world, and family and dogs and property and blah blah blah, and things add up. When you can perform the technique well enough to generate the required effect, move on to the next stage. If you're not good enough, just like Philip said, you're going to get kicked back. So if you don't get kicked back, keep going. And this is how you get the first book done in a year or 2 or 3 versus getting stuck on step 1.5 for a decade. Don't second guess yourself. Just keep going. And if it doesn't work, then go back and work on the stuff that you needed to get better at. That's my advice. And the people who do that, again, I love my coursework. I love Mark Rasmus. I love the work that Clint Sambone and a lot of these other folks are doing. But there are people out there, guys, who can cook through all 3 of these books all on their own. And the ones who do generally don't let the concept of mastery prevent them from progressing. Again, if you're not good enough at something, you're not going to be able to do the next step. And generally, you're going to find you are good enough, even if you didn't think you were. So just develop that baseline proficiency at a technique and keep pressing. And again, if the next thing doesn't work, go back and practice some more.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Would anyone else like to jump in?
Yeah, I'll say, just to reiterate what Philip and Bob said. In any other endeavor, you'd not stay on the one thing for years, if not a decade. But suddenly, because we're in this discipline, people spend 5, and I say people, I did as well. You know, so I say this from experience, from doing it both ways, is you know, if you're doing, whether it be martial arts, whether it be studying a skill, whatever, you wouldn't stay on stage 1 for years until you've perfected it. You can only see the landscape as you move on and look back. Then you see how that one stage fits into the entire system of things. But without perspective on how that thing fits into the whole, you really can't progress that far. So you have to move on. And as Bob and Philip said, very naturally, if you can do the next thing, go on. If you do it and you're not getting anywhere, well, that's your clear sign you need to go back. But trust yourself, and I'd say take insight from others, but also feel free to ignore everyone else's opinion and go with what you think, rather than be swayed by a group of people that say you should or you shouldn't. That would be what I would say.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Now, I just want to say we're getting close to the top of the hour here, and I've got to do a little bit of guest admin shortly. But unless one of the other guests would like to comment on this, I'd like to just get a couple of another question in. So is everyone cool to keep moving along? Cool. Okay.
Yep.
Well, yep. Cool. Okay. So the next question I have is for I'm going to put this one's for, we'll start with David. And David, has astrology, this is a bit of a no-brainer, obviously, because you're an astrologer, professional one at that, and highly prolific, has astrology, or simply being aware of planetary positions and movements, been valuable in relation to training, initiation, hermetics?
Yes.
I thought so.
That's it. Like, I'll give you the quick longer answer, right? Because we're short on time, so I want to hear what others have to say as well. The quick short answer is yes. In every single exercise of initiation into hermetics, in every single aspect of that program of initiation, astrology is useful. No, it's not essential. You don't need it. But it is really useful in some steps, and just damn useful in all of them, if you ask me. You've got your birth chart, right? Just to break it down into 4 things that astrology can give you. You've got your birth chart, which gives you insight into your astral nature, your soul, your astral balance, and all of that, right? Your character, if you like, your black and white mirrors. You've got all of the predictive techniques that come with Western astrology, transits, forecasting with progressions and all of that, which is helpful in maintaining the elemental equilibrium. When you've got the elemental equilibrium, that is absolutely one of the best things you can have in your toolbox, is because you will know what life's ups and downs are bringing for you in their various symbolic forms, right? So you'll be prepared for that and be able to handle it and understand it much more easily. So basically about having good maps, right? That part. The third part is your relationships with other people. You have a birth chart, someone else has a birth chart. Astrology can show you all kinds of stuff that will help you to more magically relate to other people as a magician, right? Understand them better, comprehend them better, and then also work with them energetically on all those different levels that magicians do. And then you've got the 4th level, which is, it just helps you basically in general planning rituals and ceremonies and things like that. You could be the greatest magician in the world, like Franz Barden. You can still have a bad astrological day and knock the candles over and set fire to your altar. And astrology is really helpful in figuring out when those days are going to be and when the other days are going to be, when it's all going to go without a hitch, you know. That's it. That's my answer.
Oh, that's fantastic, man. Right. We'll have you back, definitely. That was a high quality response. Thank you. And yeah, so we'll keep things moving along here. Philip.
Well, I have to admit, I don't use a huge amount of astrology, and I think that I should, because to use a cricket analogy, I think using the right conjunctions and things that I need to really, is the difference perhaps between hitting a 6 and putting it out of the boundary, and just getting a quick run or getting a quick single in, that's about as far. And I think that although it's true that the stars guide, do not force, what an advice. I really ought to take more advantage of it. I admit sometimes I do things without paying attention to conjunctions, and it is hard. You can tell with hindsight that was a lot harder than it needed to be, but I can't really offer anything specific apart from that general awareness, because it's something that I haven't really looked into a huge amount.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I've got to say, like, the more I learn about astrology, the more things make sense to me. Even just like noticing where the planets are at when I get up to watch a sunrise, and if I see, there's Venus, and then there's Mars, and then there's the Moon, and then there's the Sun, and it's like that changes. And I keep records. I keep moon phases. I found moon phases to be a really good thing to follow, just in general, because that's a very obvious one. So thank you for that, Philip. All right, James and or Tanya, would you guys like to jump in on this one?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about David's astral visions course, because in my experience of, I've because a lot of people talk with Bardens that Barden always said that you are not, you are under your astrological sign until you come out of it. So I'm not explaining that very well, but and there's always that debate there. Is it a use of the whole point of, I suppose, IH is to be able to transcend from that, but also as well, we are influenced by, I think we can deny that we are influenced by our particular astrological makeup, and but it doesn't have to define us. And I think for me, what was really helped me with working on my soul mirrors and also one's own life purpose was when I found that I was sort of getting stuck in certain areas of my life that I could not explain. That there's nothing in my life that was that was anything that would stop it. There was certain things that, or experiences, or things that I would feel or experience. For example, for my life, I experienced a deep fear. I mean, it was beyond fear; it was terror. That if I go into a deep meditation, and it would be so horrendous. I wouldn't be able to go so far into my meditation. And it was only really through working with David that we uncovered that through going through the astrology, and he basically sort of takes you on a journey, and there was something in a past life that had happened, that had created like a shock, and this had carried over into this present life, and hence it was unexplainable. And it was only through David picking it up, actually, and going through the chart, and suddenly this memory came back to me, and I was able to very clearly see exactly what it was and able to heal from it. But so I think not only can it guide you in your everyday life, but certainly having someone go through the chart with you and look at your own makeup as well, and also can help you probably a lot quicker working with soul mirror stuff as well, because if your fire is propensity to have more fire than you have water, then you probably know that you need to work on that as well. It can save you time, rather than trying to sort of fight against the tide. In a way, you can work with it. I mean, I don't know, David, what you'd have to anything to add to that, what insights you had, we were working on this stuff.
Yeah, I remember all of that very clearly, obviously. And it's something that I've done with other people as well. It's not something that I set out to do, but past life memories can sometimes come up for people when we're talking about what they're dealing with as we're dealing with that, right? And they can recover them and pull them up. There is a way to read them symbolically in the birth chart. At least there's a way to read the ones that are impacting this life, this incarnation in the birth chart. It's a technique that can be taught. It's not like a psychic ability that you need to pick up or acquire. It's a technical thing that can be taught to people. But again, it will only describe that lifetime symbolically, and you won't see the specifics of those details. They only really exist in the Akasha for you and for psychics and people that can read the Akasha and so forth. They're not really depicted in astrology. As an example, you might have like a strong past life pattern involving Mars Aries energy, which might point to you being like a warrior or a fighter or someone who was in war a lot, right? But it might not. But the general energy is of someone who is a battler in life, like a fighter in life, and experiences life as an arena in which they have to fight a lot for something. It could be a cause, might not be a physical battle. So astrology has these symbolic energies that can be interpreted many different ways, but they always point true. They always point true to the essence of the energy that you're dealing with. Maybe not to the details of that life, but to the essence of the pattern and why it might be blocking you in this one. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I can. Yeah, I mean, I think it really, for me, going through that really allowed sort of a freeing up and just a closure as well, just able to dissipate, just sort of transform energy. That because often we have a lot of things that are streams of things coming in. I think as well this path opens up that certainly when I first met one of my teachers, Martin Fox, there was a catalyst that happened, and it just a flood of things just sort of come through. It was almost every week I was dealing with something else, and it was just opened up a whole line of history of past life experiences or energies, streams of things that are coming through that opened up. So I think that's something else, I suppose, is to be aware of as well with this path. It sort of brings all your other paths together, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly I think astrology can, looking at a birth chart can definitely help.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And I've got to do a little bit of guest admin here, so I want to say thank you so much to Mr. Philip Harris Smith. Always a pleasure, sir. Now I've got the link up on here where people can go and see. There's a guest blog information point there. Now, Philip, have you got any final words to share with the audience?
Understand the difference between, to use the term paradigm, what Barden offers and what, for example, you find in chaos magic. To just be very, very brief, in chaos magic, you'll do something and you'll jumble up the sigil so that you don't know what it means to your conscious mind. I could go into more detail, but that's basically, then you do various magical things to do it. In Barden, even at the early beginning stuff, for example, loading things with universal light, you don't do that. You're clear in your intent. In other words, you're one-pointed. You're the magician. And it's a different deal. And it's, in my view, the best one. But I think people, if you just look at what Barden's offering you overall, there's a clarity and what I would call a one-pointedness. And then once you see that, you can then make a much clearer decision about what kind of stuff you want to work on. And that would probably be the only thing I can offer. But thank you very much for having me today. It's been a real pleasure. Again, thank you very much.
Oh, you're most welcome, and I really appreciate you bringing your time, wisdom, and insights into the panel here. So thank you so much, sir. Have yourself a beautiful, wonderful day, and we will be in touch again soon.
All right. See you now. Cheers.
Okay. All right. So now, David, I've also got you on the thanks so much for joining us list, and just wanted to say, have you got any final words?
Final words for tonight? Not really. Just be yourself, right? Do whatever you can in your life to improve that, like to be a better version of yourself that you can be. And it doesn't really matter whether you're on the, like doing the steps of like 1 to 10 of Barden or whatever else it is that you're doing, whether you're doing that or not. If you work on being the best version of yourself that you can be, you are on the same path as I am. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. And yes, once again, also thank you so much for your time, wisdom, and insights. Have a beautiful day, and we'll be in touch very soon. Thank you so much. Okay, and so James and Tanya, thank you. Sorry, James, you didn't get round to you for the astrology question, but would you like to have any final words, James and Tanya?
No final words, really, just to say thank you for having me and having us, and enjoyable to share just some of the experiences. And yeah, I hope we can join you again.
Absolutely. Tanya.
Yeah, again, thank you very much. Really wonderful to be here, and great to speak to everyone as well, and nice to see Bob as well there. And yeah, really enjoyable, and it's really lovely to hear everybody's insights. Very informative. Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome, and thank you for joining us this week too. I really appreciate you jumping in and trying it out. It's been a real pleasure. So thank you, James and Tanya. Have yourself a beautiful, wonderful, amazing day. And there is FalconBooksPublishing.com, and of course Perseus Arcane Academy, and there's heaps of stuff to go and check out there. So thank you so much, everybody. And now I'm going to bring in our very, very special guests, if I can get the screen right. And I'm going to bring in, no, Bob's gone funny, so I'm going to do it like this is for the moment. So I'm going to bring in Victoria as well, because that'll allow me to do the screen properly, I think. And sorry, Bob. Okay, Michael Lamb. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I've got to do a bit of gymnastics here. Okay, well, first of all, I want to welcome the very cool Manuela and Michael Lamb. Manuela, I want to get your last name pronounced correctly, so I'm going to ask you to pronounce that, please. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be there. It's pronounced Hecht. It's a German name, so yeah.
Well, thank you for having us. Yeah. Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Bob and Phil Bard In show. Thanks for joining us. Lovely to be here. Thank you very much.
And yeah, I mean, you know, you guys have been doing a bit of travel lately, and you even stopped over here in New Zealand just recently down to Queenstown and have been sharing some of your adventures down there. And I've been to Queenstown. I went there on a musicians conference of all things during the off season, and we got to do a bit of exploring. And man, that place is something special. Like, I've traveled a bit in New Zealand, but Queenstown is, I don't know. Would you like to just share a little bit of that story?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks very much for the engagement. Queenstown's energy is absolutely phenomenal. And we also had the blessing of, you know, having a view of the Remarkables aircraft coming in. Oh, yeah. The color of the lake too. So if you're quite into the vivid energies of the cabala, it's like you're breathing it in, literally, you know, these incredible blue turquoise energy. Plus, obviously, it's quite elvish or, you know, fairy-like if you're very much of the air element. The vibration there is fantastic. Also, there's been the southern aurora borealis, which has been phenomenal. All those magnetic storms. I think we had a G5, one of the most powerful ones, just last night. We were chasing that a bit, so that was fun. And the food was fabulous. The people, just the energy. That there's a really powerful energy dynamic, which I'm sure a lot of you people, when you're working with energy and life force, you would be picking up on that. It was all very exciting and very engaging and quite colorful for us. Got to see some glaciers, so, you know, frozen river. The energy of that is quite, you know, powerful, inspiring, yet still So if you're into the stillness of the meditations, you're right there. It was fabulous. And it brought in so many energies, everything from the most powerful, rich air in the elvish forests, as well as, food, by the fireplace, really enjoying so many different dimensions,
Lots of dragon energy.
Yeah, giant faces in the mountains. Oh my God, this is so powerful, like earth energy magnified again, So yeah, the elemental beings definitely seem to be like next level again.
Yeah.
So it was very good and very engaging for us on so many levels. We feel so enriched by that experience. It was good.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. I like so much. And like you said, like the Remarkables are pretty, for me, they were pretty damn remarkable. Like it was straight out my hotel, it was straight out my bedroom window. And like, I'm pretty sure that those were what we used in the Lord of the Rings movie for the Gates of Mordor, like the wall.
No,
they used.
No doubt. Yeah, it felt that way. Just everywhere we were going, it was Lord of the Rings, and we happened to be watching it on the way home, ironically, So,
On the plane.
yeah.
As you do. Everyone watches it on the
plane.
plane. It's mandatory.
Gosh. Yeah. Well, that was one of the big inspirations in the last century for a lot of this kind of work. Lord of the Rings, it leads back, quite beautifully, and eloquently. Inspired a lot of the great writers for the Dungeons and Dragons, which a lot of the video games that were based on. So it's always very, very deep in our heart and our blood, on those levels. So you feel it there. It feels good.
Awesome. And was this your first time to New Zealand, Manuel?
No, it wasn't my first time. It was the first time to the South Island. I've been to the North Island, but yeah, it's very different, the South Island, and the energy. I felt it was just much more, I don't know, raw, more intense. But then also the last time I went there is over 10 years ago, and I've done some more training in the meantime. So yeah, I'm not sure if I can compare it, properly, as I've obviously changed in the last 10 years and developed. So, I'm experiencing the energy more now, and the beings and everything else there.
Well, I have to say, in addition to what you said, yes, the South Island is it's like a whole nother world to the north, and even the North Island. The New Zealand, it's only these two big islands really, and they, it's very vertical in a sense. It's very like a big straight line type of thing, but there is so much variety. I mean, I met a guy from Invercargill, and he had an accent, and I thought he was from a different country. Because he rolled his R's, like almost. And it was literally like that. And pretty funny, man. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, guys. And I've got some very apropos questions for the group in a sec, but I just want to welcome back and say thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you here, sister. What's been happening? How have you been?
I've been good. Thank you for having me again. I love the way you structure this and you format it. Fine folks to talk with. I've been playing with my dog and doing house chores besides magic, so everyday stuff.
Oh yeah, life happens, right? And so as we do, I've still got to get up and do the dishes and things. So but I do it magically though. That's the difference, right? My dishes are magic dishes.
Yes.
And that's it. So
hey, share how that works then.
Well, surprisingly, when washing the dishes, that's some of the most magical times when my crown chakra will be, because I'll just be kind of very present to washing. Then all of a sudden, different realms will open up and kind of descend into my presence while I'm just, washing dishes.
Yeah, that's true. I experienced that as well. Yeah, you just get those insights and ideas. Yeah. Doesn't mean I like doing the dishes though.
The art of Zen and the Tao, washing dishes, only here on the Bard Inn.
Yeah, you know it, man. We're down to earth. We're street level here. down on the street, man. Okay, so let's keep moving things here. I've got so we've got 12 people in the chat or watching. So if anyone's got questions, please poke them through onto the thing. I've got some questions backed up that we will get to, but I wanted to just crank on this question that we finished in the last hour with, and just get through, pass this on to Bob, Victoria, Manuela, and Michael. And that is this question here, which is basically, and I'll throw this one to Bob. Has astrology or simply being aware of planetary positions and movements been valuable in relation to training IIH?
Absolutely. This is something where IIH practitioners could take a page from the ritual guys. When the ritual guys are going to do a big working, they pay a lot of attention to the planetary hours and all of this kind of thing in order to make sure there's enough ambient charge, if you will, to do whatever they're going to try to do. Now, I know we're all, masters of the universe working from my grandmother's basement, but everybody can use a free lunch too. So what I tell people is, listen, if you're going to do something that requires a lot of astral energy, do it around the time of the new moon. There's more of that there to work with. If you're going to do something that requires, out of body projection, the new moon works better because there's less grounding energy. So full moon, more astral, new moon, less astral. Depending upon what you want to work on, use that to your advantage. Because, listen, we're human beings. We're an internal power system. We practice a lot. Go team. Okay. But the amount of astral and mental energy generated by these supermassive things called planets that are screaming through space at hundreds of thousands of kilometers per hour isn't something as human beings we can recreate in volume. So use that to your advantage depending upon what you want to work on. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. That those moon phases. When I started exploring the moon phases, is a sort of just like it's so easy because it's in the sky. You don't have to have a special app or anything, or know the thing. It's very obvious and very powerful. And the dreams, like monitoring dreams over moon phases, that started to give me insights. So thank you. Yeah, beautiful. Manuela and Michael. I have no doubt. I haven't checked out much of Michael's stuff. I try and absorb it when I can, but I know you comment a lot on planetary topics and things like that. So I'd love to get feedback from you both on this question.
Well, thanks very much. Excellent answer there too, Bob. By the way, that was very, very insightful. Particularly if you're looking at different types of astrology, like the Western, well, there's the tropical and there's the sidereal or the Vedic. That works a lot. There's a lot of emphasis put on the north and south node of the moon because there's so much magnetism, and if we're 70-90% liquid, the magnetism of the moon, tides ebbing and flowing, the in and out rhythms of life is very, very powerful, and particularly if you're working a lot with different planets, different ways. So with the moon, obviously it's to magnetism and liquid, and so is Venus, but it's completely different timing and water consistency, like all the different fluids in our body. And that's how we get people to really interconnect with their astral body through their blood, their vital force. Obviously they go perspiration through their pores, all these different liquids. It's all quite elegant. And then if we want very powerful mental dexterity, you'd go straight to Mercury. I mean, the 7 days of the week are actually named after the planets. Obviously, Sun is the Sunday, Mon is Moon Day, Tues is the old ancient god of energy and battle is to Tuesday, like Mars. Wednesday, obviously Mercury. Thursday's Thor's day in the Norse, as well as Zeus or in the Greek as well. So that's a really powerful energy day. Friday's Freya, Frigga's day, partner of Thor. And then Saturday is Saturn's day. So it's powerful to calmer and etheric earth energy. So working with the planets is absolutely essential if you understand like seasons and cycles and movement. And we've just had this massive Uranus Jupiter conjunction too. So that's been quite powerful, elegant, and very, very spiritually enlightening and engaging. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Thank you so much. Yeah, wonderful. And Manuela, please.
Yeah, obviously I'm coming more from a shamanic background, having years of shamanic practitioner work done there. Yeah, you can feel that the influence quite strongly, not only around the full moon. Obviously everybody goes a bit crazy around the full moon. But you also can feel it with people, especially people that are more into the martial arts. They're very much in their Mars energy, and they're almost like disconnected from other planetary energies, because they so work on that alpha male dominant energy, and it comes out in the healings as well. And obviously, certain days of the week and depending when they are born, the astrology, all of that has an impact as well on the person, on what they are experiencing, on their healing, why they're coming to see me. So yeah, we are literally in the middle of this whole shaboodle of lots of planets, stars, energy, everything. So yeah, of course it has a big impact on us, but a lot of people sort of like, practice one modality more, and then obviously they're influenced from that a bit more, I would say.
Wonderful. Thank you. Victoria, would you like to jump in on this one?
Yeah. So for astrology and planetary positions and movements in relation to IIH, first I'd like to say I find a lot more value with it with PME, practice of magical evocation, because you have the intelligences at the different spheres. But for IIH at the very baseline, you can look at it with your birth chart and your kind of soul mirrors and your elemental composition, and identifying that at the time of your birth, there's these different forces that imprinted on you based on your birth chart, and stations from different planets, whether beneficent, maleficent, or neutral. But also, as the astrology continues to change, there's going to be different forces that may be impacting your life. I know some magicians will write in their magical journals where the astrological placements are during their different practices, to also monitor its influence, whether it's solely from the moon's perspective or the sun's. I don't personally do that, but that's one approach you can do as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to shift on from the astrology question now, and I'm going to bring up an audience question. So I'm going to bring this in, and I'm going to pass this one to Bob first. And so Bob, here we go. Can the panel discuss some of the advanced abilities like lighting the cotton ball, and what are the realistic expectations we should have? I have heard it suggested to do IIH more than once. So there's probably two questions there, but yeah, I'll let you just start, sir.
If you're going to work with things like physical manifestation, this is not something I have any particular great ability at, full disclosure. You need to break it into manageable steps. So just like you go into the gym, you put 2 20 kg plates on the bar, one on each end, and that's manageable. For the same guy, if you went in and put 4 plates on the bar, 2 on each end, he'd probably get pinned by the bar. So lighting the cotton ball on fire. One of my students did a path working on the sun sphere about a month ago. Ended up contacting an intelligence that specialized in structure in Kabbalah. And it was very explicit, because listen, start with something very easy to do. So you take the cotton ball, you soak it in linseed oil. Work until you can get that to smoke and catch on fire, and then gradually use less and less linseed oil until you don't need any at all. Because these physical manifestations take such a large amount of energy to pull off, until that pipe gets big enough and you can provide enough focus, you need to break it into steps that are easier to do. And I think this is probably one of the biggest mistakes with that. Additionally, for what it's worth, the same entity mentioned that physical manifestation is harder to do now than it used to be in the past because of all of the EMF radiation floating around. Cell phones, electrical wires, all this other kind of stuff. And what I can tell you is, particularly when I was in Eastern Turkey, if you can go to a place where there's no electromagnetic radiation in the background that's artificially being created, I'm not talking sunlight, you'll actually cross a physical threshold when that hits. And the whole vibration of the place just changes. It's very, 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 very noticeable. So, having a place that's not directly underneath, power transmission wires, probably a good idea. But also make it easier for yourself. The other person I would talk to is Clint Sambone. He's had some pretty good success with physical manifestation. Regarding the second question, you have to revisit material. Guys, a lot of this stuff in IAH is just like working out in the gym. If you quit doing cardio and you don't go for a run, well, your cardio is going to suck. Yeah. Now, maybe you're lifting more weights, for a while, or you're doing more cardio for a while. But if I don't go back and do the vacancy of thoughts and watching of thoughts exercises at least once every 6 months, my concentration period goes from like half an hour down to about 30 seconds. You have to revisit this stuff. And because we're human, it's just kind of part of the deal. Yeah. So cool, man. That's all I got.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. I think that, setting yourself up for success, it's like I said another one, if you set the next rung on the ladder up too high, a bit out of reach, it's like, you can kind of meet the outcome sort of halfway and, set up the environment to be conducive to success with incremental sort of micro bridges, if you will, like success, like Mark Rasmus would say, compound success. And that will be very uplifting and encouraging and keep you energized, because you want to keep your energy up too, because that's kind of something you pull on, right? So Michael and Manuela, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I very much agree with what Bob said, taking it in steps. What I also find it's important when you want to influence the physical dimension, you need to have a really strong balanced connection to, the elements. And a lot of people don't have that. They might be very strong in one element, but they're not very strong in the other. And then they're trying to use their energy to light a cotton ball, or, if they want to manifest something else that might be more useful, to use the energy for that, because it costs you energy, and you have to bring that in or create it in that sense. So you need the energy you need to have the energy for that. And if you look at people's life, most of the people don't have their elements balanced that much. They get into an argument with somebody and they're completely on fire and blow up, and then they try to blow up a cotton ball. So yeah, what I find, a lot of people don't have their foundations sorted. They sort of like jump to the high end, but they don't go through the steps and really get the basic solid foundation to get there and to do that and see it also from all angles.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting the steps in place and the pathways, but where you can actually conduct the energy, because we're working on conduction and induction with our body constantly. And sure, if you know your way around your house, you know how to get back to your home and where you're going to work or anything along those lines, you've got open pathways, it. However, getting yourself into slightly more challenging situations, you're setting the bar at the next level, as it's been described once again. It's an attitude of opening up your energy if you want to set cotton balls on fire, fine. And it's a good practice, but also there's also magic mirror, or if you want to, create work with nature spirits and move along those lines, with lightning, you'd need a good background or a good foundation. There's so many areas you can go with magical work in this regard. And you can start working with the beings, like you said. Well, Bob had mentioned one of his students obviously wanted to work with Levum or one of the other higher sun sphere beings, and they jump in too high. They haven't come in through the the nature spirits. Just work with the zone girdling the earth, those kind of beings within invocation and evocation. Those are probably the areas that are strong, but you still need solid elemental foundations, and also working with the bodies. It's going to help that if you're going to be channeling. A lot of the chakras that are overlooked are definitely your feet and your hands, where you're actually projecting a lot of energy. And the amount of work that your hands have done in this lifetime alone is off the chart. So you want to keep opening them up. You've got 5 elements sitting in your fingers, negative and positive, masculine and feminine. So you want to be able to channel that. It was one of Barden's exercises we used to do. Put your hand on the table, move your astral body through the timber, and then you start, meshing and harmonizing with the atomic structure. So, we're at the center of this. If you want to be able to work with certain areas, pick your target and then push forward with that. And if you push too hard with too much fire, come back, like water a seed out, calibrate, strengthen yourself, and then keep moving. Take it in stages. And the key is the breath.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Victoria.
Yeah, this is a great question, Phil. So, initially, you already have some advanced abilities that come with IIH, like Michael mentioned, the magic mirror, out-of-body projection, being able to do transfer of consciousness. But for example, working with KTQ, one Bardenus mentioned project the air element, mother letter, into the sky to either cause it to become sunny or dark. But you can have advanced abilities kind of manifest outside of IIH as well, depending on kind of your magical background. So just some quick personal stories. When I was a teenager and doing spell work, I was able to kind of create thunderstorms in my area. I've seen people in other systems be able to float and suspend themselves in the air. As Bob mentioned, Clit Sabom has talked about being able to levitate. When I was young, I was kind of into dark magic and low magic, and there were girls in high schools I really didn't like and wanted them to become pregnant. And they did, kind of not a healthy energy and intention to put out there. But I think there's many different ways depending on also where you're kind of pulling your system through, your energy through. And as Michael mentioned, kind of the channels it's coming through. And also the quality and quantity. So I used kind of a unhelpful example of kind of probably negative astral energy I was using that influenced teen pregnancy. But like you can work with cabala letter energy that is very different. And it also is about kind of what you direct it towards. But also, as Bob mentioned, it's easier to work with the energies at the Akashic, the mental and astral, but then the output to the physical takes a little bit more chutzpah and voltage. But it also depends on kind of your approach. So IIH, we see systems like that. But for example, you can use creative visualization for manifestation. So like in the house I live before I moved here, I had saw it available for rent. I was looking at all the photos and I was actively, continuously imagining myself living in the place, walking through all the rooms, living in there. And then the apartment ended up going off the market because someone else took the apartment. And I thought, okay, I thought I lost it, but I still held to faith. Somehow I'm going to get this apartment. And it ended up falling through with the first people who wanted the apartment. And then I was able to get it. So that was also just like manifestation, solely through creative visualization and putting energy into something. So there's the techniques we learned from Barden's system, but there's also several systems from the East or the West where you can start to manifest advanced abilities like that. And I also agree about doing IIH more than once. I mean, we have a lifetime. If you start touching 1, 2, or 3 of Barden's books, you might want to circle back and revisit them. I mean, one of my favorite exercises of Barden's is the void meditation. And sometimes when I don't feel like doing practices, I'll just sit there and go into silence and emptiness of mind, because like that's one exercise I love to return to over and over again.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, you know, I before I discovered Barden, I came across a works by a chap who inadvertently has some of the exercises just articulated slightly differently. He uses a Jungian approach with one of the exercises, and one of these was essentially it led me to this blank mind or this void mind meditation, and it was just really satisfying. I've got a busy mind, right? And meditation has been so wonderful over the years to help sort of sort that out. And but that blank mind one, that's yeah, it's a good one. I concur with you there. All right, hey, thank you everyone. That was great. And so I've got another question here. Let's just rip through some of these audience questions. So I'm going to throw this one to Michael first. Michael, the question is, Michael Austin is asking a question from Michael to Michael. Question for who wants to answer. William Mistley speaks on incarnated elemental beings sometimes. Has anyone experienced or have any experiences of any incarnated beings, elemental or otherwise? So, yeah.
Okay, to me first, is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's for you, Michael.
I would say, yeah, absolutely. Working in had a construction background as well as obviously in the industry of engineering. So we would come across people that were very profoundly skilled in mechanics or welding, and they'd look like gnomes. I mean, the features were unmistakable. And some people were airy, or very fast-minded quicklings. You would see the elvish features. Was a friend of mine yesterday. I wanted to take a photo of him. I hadn't seen him in ages, and he'd progressed so much in so many areas, and he's like had elvish ears. This is real. I can spot it in people, and it's not just me. When you work with this energy constantly about elemental energy, you've been around magic, you've been working with martial arts, East and Western philosophies, it becomes quite apparent that you can say, oh, there's a fire elf there. You can see that woman, she's really fierce in her energy, but she could be quite gentle. So there'll be combinations of incarnated elemental beings. There's no doubt we've had this energy before. You can go to the Americas, you can go to Europe, you can go to Asia, and you'll see that energy. Even if you get it, you'll see reptilian features in some people too. And this is not, woo-woo. This is real when you become quite proficient at a lot of the energies. And you don't even have to be that proficient. You might have seen it once you were quite young. It's just you become very adaptable. This guy can fix anything. Doesn't matter about racials. It's not that. It's more interspecies that you sort of see these dimensional beings, or some people are more ET-like as well. They're beyond the terrestrial planes. They're sort of more into the ethereal or astral planes. It becomes quite prevalent because the physical body is a blueprint. You can see it. You can't lie. I mean, you've got our own individual fingerprints. If you do palmistry, your life's mapped out on your palm. Obviously, if you're an acupuncture, your ears, allopathic medicine, they go by the tongue, iridologists to the eyes, and of course, and scuriologists. And then, you go through the feet, you got reflexology, the body's mapped out. So there'll be certain traits that'll be quite strong, whether it be through astrology or, your numerical line that you came in on. And plus there may be some, obviously, aspects of your heritage, through your ancestral bloodline and so forth. So it does become quite apparent that there's elemental incarnated beings. That's the best way I can express that simply.
Well, yeah, wonderful. That was a really great response because, yeah, I totally resonate with you too. It's loosely analogous to like people who look like their dogs, even.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons became very real, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is real. It's actually happening, and almost sometimes like in this holographic world, what particularly, I'm sure all of the people here have experienced similar. If not, otherwise it's like, there's the cat-like people as well, and there's the deer-faced people. Yeah, you do see that, and there are a lot of the ancient hybrids. But please continue. I'm loving this interview.
Yeah, cool, man. This is good stuff. Anyone in the crowd, if you're loving this, please keep throwing your questions in. Okay, right, Manuela, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, I basically just agree with what Michael said. Like some people you meet, like just when we were in New Zealand, we met one person, and it was literally just a impersonated gnome. He was like behaving like a gnome with his crystals and the way he was thinking and feeling and even his features. Yeah, you obviously meet those, I don't know, crossovers or reincarnated beings from all different realms, literally everywhere, depending where you go. That's usually where you find them. So, obviously those earth beings are more drawn to, nature areas or crystals. If you go more into the darker ET energies, you might, I don't know, go to some cities. I don't want to mention any buildings or cities. But yeah, I'm sure you get what I mean. But yeah, they're everywhere, and yeah, it's so beautiful to see that diversity as well.
Yeah, wonderful, lovely. Victoria, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, so definitely different elemental beings and different spirits incarnate in this world. I actually have two girlfriends of mine, one who's an undine and another who's a fairy spirit who's incarnated. So when your empathy is kind of developed, you can sense these things, or clairvoyance, and see kind of what kind of spirit people really are, or feel it. But as you kind of, because Michael mentioned William Still once said that Earth is kind of like Grand Central Station, and you have all these spirits that are kind of coming here. So whether it's from different solar systems, different elementals, all these different kind of beings are kind of coming in. So even though they are in the physical body framework, not every spirit is of the human consciousness kind of tribe. So one way it's been explained to me is like there's a group of beings that are purely human in their spirit form. But then there's other kind of spirits who their original state might not be of the human creation, but they are able to incarnate into humanity and partake in this reality.
Wonderful, thank you. Bob, have you got any comments on this?
Yeah, I think Michael and Manuela and Victoria handled the elemental aspect pretty well. I'd like to talk a minute about a phenomenon known as walk-ins. And these are people who generally physically died when they were about 11 or 12. And then their spirit got replaced by somebody or something else. For whatever bizarro universe reason, I've run into about 4 or 5 of these over a 30-year period. I got to study with one for a while. 3 others tried to kill me spontaneously for reasons I didn't completely understand, and I'll get into that in a minute. And I see. So the thing about walk-ins is these people often can display what I call heavy hitter level esoteric abilities. I mean, they can literally bend reality, physical effects, you name it. This can make them dangerous to be around because frequently they're very mentally unbalanced. And whatever the hell it is that motivates somebody like this is not something that I have ever been able to figure out. The energy in a place can physically change when one of them shows up. Interestingly, the New Agers flee like rats from a sinking ship when one of these guys moves into the area. It's a unique phenomenon I've seen a few times. They just get the hell out of Dodge. Because it's like a guy walking around with a nuclear reactor in one hand, and you're not going to do anything with that. The frustrating thing about studying with one of these people, if you are able to do that, is one, they can blow you out in an instant, and there's basically nothing you can do about it. But 2, you can't really learn from them. As one individual I spent some time with said, I just put my body in a certain shape and these things happen. So the wonder of Barden's system is it's trainable. You got these techniques, you do the techniques, you can do the thing. Great. With a lot, like one walk-in that I tried studying with for a while, basically consisted of me touching their hands and them shooting me about 6 meters across the room. And this wasn't a refined physical Fa-Jin type thing. It was just whatever force they were generating, grabbing me and shooting me through the air over and over again. And they're being very confused when I couldn't do what they were trying to project into me. So these individuals are very rare. For whatever reason, I seem to run into them every 5 or 6 years. And working with them can be very confusing. What I would tell most people here is if you happen to run into one of these individuals, A, be very polite, and B, if anything is the least bit wonky, get the living hell out of there just as quickly as you can. Because it's like trying to surf into a 20-meter tall wave. You're not going to beat the wave. You're just going to get crushed. So, and the wave doesn't care. That's the other thing working with these individuals that can be really mind-bendy is it's like you're wandering around a Titan, and if the Titan steps on you, well, yeah, they might feel bad about that, or they might not even notice. So that's what I can say about walk-ins. And Michael, it looks like you might have something to add to that.
Oh gosh, thank you very much, Bob. Oh, too, thank you very much, Tor, as well. This is it's a brilliant opportunity to express with like-minded souls. Yeah, I've been called a walk-in, and also I have come across that kind of energy. Once again, you do see it occasionally from time to time. It's as well, it's sort of set up on this planet. We have like billions of souls trying to get in and get a few incarnations done or whatever. And obviously the Philosopher's Stone is about resurrecting and surviving death and, taking yourself into other levels and planes. You do get the whole mixed bag here. And I've come across some of these kind of beings, and whether they know that they're really different or not, but they do carry a lot of power. But once again, as Bob was explaining about technique and trainability index, that's the beauty of Barden's work. Even when you read his friend Bardo the Magician, you're actually reading, you're thinking that Barden has got that walk-in energy. I think his son Lumiere had mentioned something like that, when he was in his younger years, that his father had that kind of experience. There's a lot of power and a lot of energy. And it's different to some of the more refined energy work that we do, whether through martial arts or very magical Wicca or any of the other systems that are quite complicit in building up. Whereas they can cause chaos, as it were, as opposed to the more refined systems we go into. And we tend to hold back a lot of our energy because of obviously upsetting the locals, as it were. We want to be able to move through, life as smoothly or less of a footprint as possible, as well as creating as much joy. Just putting a smile on people's faces is a big thing if you can do that every day. However, once again, getting back to that walk-in or those kinds of beings, there are back into this whole elemental type of, you get the whole gambit. There's Dungeons and Dragons happening all the time. You get witches and warlocks, and they're hiding behind human faces, and you wouldn't believe the gambit. It goes extraterrestrial as well as elemental, and this planet's got a very, very powerful hidden history that many are not aware of. And as you go out into the outer planets and go deeper into the world, it becomes very, very apparent that it's the whole shebang. You get everything, and every time I think I've sort of mastered a fair bit, boom, Mother Nature and the world gives you a different bag. I won't harp on, but thanks very much for that opportunity, Bob. I'd like to talk a little bit more about it, but I don't want to take up too much time of the session. Thank you.
Hey, Phil, you're on mute, brother.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's actually good. The software actually just told me that my mic was muted when it heard me. Go scream, yeah. Yeah, it's really great to have such a wide breadth of experience in that, because, you know, I look back on my own life and all the interesting people I've met, and as a muso, even, you know, even no, because I worked in a construction sort of like importer distributor type thing, and forestry and all that. I met a lot of international people, and I tell you what, I've met a lot of different people from a lot of different places, and I haven't even left New Zealand. And when I look back, I tell you what, man, some people, they look like they work in a mine, or they look like they work in the forest, or they look like they work up the top of a building. You know, these types of things. Like there's a thing, you know, but I wanted to throw this one out here because I put it on as a hashtag on the thing, and I know that there's a lot of people who will be wanting to know about this. And this is on the conversation of healing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this question up. Now, I'm an energy healer. Okay, so I've practiced and studied a lot of different types, and I'm just primarily like hands-on, hands-off type of healer. And I found that you know, now that I've come across Barden's work and Mark Rasmus's work, and I've kind of specialized in a sense, or focused a bit more, and that's opened up some new things as I've sort of restricted the information input. But what I found is that the word healing, and that's why I've put it in quotes marks here, is because, you know, my understanding nowadays is, as an energy healer, is that, you know, it's not just about a sore thing or a you know, it's so much more. It's almost like purification, or removing noise, or cleaning up the signal, you know, and straightening the pipe. And I'm coming up with all these analogous kinds of like ways of sort of talking about healing now, and especially like looking at the 3-body schooling model that Barden offers in Initiation into Hermetics. You're essentially healing the body, even though it's functional, you're kind of denoising it in a sense. And Victoria, I would love to hear about, you know, your sort of view on healing from a Hermetic point of view.
All right, go with me first. So I'm going to kind of talk to this from a metaphysical perspective too, because that's kind of what I'm familiar with, but also put it within a Hermetic framework. So you have the different levels of reality you have to work with. So healing is multifaceted. You have the different levels of reality. You have the source of output. You know, are you channeling healing through your hands? Are you channeling healing through your mental body? Also, where are you injecting and working on the healing? Is it psychological? Is it emotional? Is it physical? And as you mentioned, kind of the noise and signal, that's a great point too, because you have to understand how different noise have different frequencies. So say I had a deposit of something bad in my arm, and it has kind of a chaotic signature. So understanding how to work with energy and change the frequency of that energy then is going to restore and reset harmony within wherever that is causing an imbalance. So it can get very microscopic when you do healing, and also assessing where is the healing needing to be done, and what kind of tool needs to be used for this healing. You know, for example, you know, putting a ray of golden light onto something might not necessarily heal that. Say you're putting it into someone's aura, you know, that might help kind of reset the framework of some things. But maybe the source of the healing is, you know, there has to be psychological work or astral work if it's kind of emotional based, or if it's like trauma based, it might be left signatures in the physical body. Like you hear about some people who, you know, they might be getting a massage and then all of a sudden start crying because they stored energy somewhere in their body. So there's all these different modalities you can use for healing. But if you are a Barden magician, you can really develop your repertoire of techniques, you know, understanding elemental compositions, different planes of reality, vital energy, being able to work with the magnetic and electric fluid, applying light to the healing, assessing also through your clairsenses, where does the healing need to go? You can work with different spirits from PME that may be able to assist you if you want to work with them as well. So that's all I have on that one.
Oh man, that was great. Thank you. Yeah. And like, I must say just quickly from my own point of view too, you know, starting with just sort of like all these different sort of modalities that, especially like say something like Reiki, which is like, there's like one particular energy is generally referenced. And then you go through the Chinese medicine and then they break it into, you know, you get more granularity as you keep exploring it. And so more options, you know, more tools for the bag. But Michael and Manuela, I'd love to hear your take on this.
Yeah, thank you. I do agree with Victoria. There is, yeah, obviously I come from the shamanic background and then got into Baden's work, into the hermetic side of things. So in my practice, I sort of like combine everything. And yeah, watching other practitioners, other techniques, everybody sort of like has a different approach to the healing, the way they do the healing, and also the area they work in. So some people obviously work more in the astral body, more in the mental body. Other people bring in beings. But personally, what I find the most effective healing is when literally I don't do the healing. Like in generally, I don't do the healing. I just channel it through. But the healing needs to take place in all the bodies, in all levels, and also almost like in all time frames. It literally needs to take place everywhere that's involved with that person. And you have, you know, you have the karma involved. You have the ancestral line involved. You have the physical involved. Like there's so many things that play a role with the healing for the healing to be effective and permanent. And everything is energy. So you're sort of like, you know, changing the frequency of the energy, or you're taking the energy out to align that person to their true nature, to their true potential, or to bring them back to, you know, who they are, their true connection. And yeah, in my healings, I literally just work with the soul family of the person, or the spirit guides of the family, and they do the healing. I let them decide what is happening, and I'm just sort of like translating. Obviously, I'm very clairvoyant, so I see what is happening, what are they doing, and then get the person to just facilitate it by exhaling or moving, or depending what is needed. And I find that quite effective, especially when there has been a sexual abuse. People that have seen a psychologist for 10 years, obviously they work on the mental plane with them, but the energy of the perpetrator is still there. And as soon as you remove that, you take that out, yeah, things change.
Yeah, oh, great. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Michael.
Oh, thanks very much. That was beautifully said, Manuela, and thank you too much as well, Victoria. Actually, well explained. I was actually just going to use. I generally had a very fast approach to healing from a very young age, and also when with my background, I was, you know, cuts and burns and that kind of thing. I was exposed to a lot of physical damage around me as well. And when I started the work a long time back, it was phenomenal how quickly you could heal yourself. And then once again, with other people, it's a little bit different. There's another thing about, you know, what they're eating, and also, once again, it could be karmic that Manuela said about as well, or it could be in the energy field. One of the first really supercharged energies was obviously when I learned light blue from the Kabbalah. You know, we're taught that and got to really balance it. I still use that as well. It's one of the big issues happens on aircraft when we're about to take off. The decompression, a baby starts screaming. It creates this negative energy with a lot of people. That's probably one of my things. I'm just going to harp on this just so I can finish this. Put light blue, just do that. You know, like a real monk, like a really powerful. Put that through, you know, obviously the mental astral plane. Do that. It's really good. It calms the babies. The decompression stops, you know, all the guys going, shut that baby up. You know, mentally you can hear it. You know, I'm sure you all do. It just chills the energy of the plane. You tune into the decompression that's going on inside the fuselage. And anyway, it's an oldie but a goodie. It's one of the ones that it's obviously, you know, works through. Obviously, we also get ourselves out of the way when, you know, high energy channel energy might be used, or if you're going to change the frequency of water, the vibration, because water's once again one of the great healers. You become that instrument that you can change, even if it's tap water or something. Like, you should be able to sort of do that, or bless anything that's there just by your presence, and obviously your other side, whether it be your guides or any of the big powerful genies or principals that want to work with you, that they'll just come in, just step aside there, little fella, and away it goes. There's so many different aspects, like you say. It's like a multitude depending on what's required for the job, and sometimes there's people that they do not believe in this sort of holistic energy. They're so sort of tight, and you're doing massage work on this, they're so boxed in. You kind of in one way just only putting out like an astral bandage on their wounds. There's nothing you can do. It's like, okay, if you're going to keep eating that garbage food and pouring in television into your head, you're going to go the way you're going to go, kind of thing. So there's other ways you can just resolve situations in a home, or harmonize situation in a work confrontation too. So it's all different layers of healing. It's all quite elegant in the way that we have to approach it. Either get totally involved in putting the band-aid in, or pulling back and letting the big guns roll through, so it's, a particular light or a particular element or energy that's relevant to the situation. Ultimately, in hermetics, it's all going to come back down to the physical and material. It's great having it all up there. You might be able to clear it in the astral or the mental, or, from the Akashic planes. But if they're not going to be the subject tuned to it, that's where it's going to, it's the buck stops there sort of approach to things. You can only go so far, and then, you have to move on.
Oh man, thank you so much. Wonderful. These are wonderful responses, and what a wonderful box of treasures for the audience. So please keep putting your questions through. Now we are at the top of the hour here, but I managed to give everyone a bit of a probe and a nudge. So we're going to do a bit of overtime. So if anyone in the group needs to disappear early, just flick me a message in the private chat if you could, and I'll start initiating the exit protocol. But Mr. Bob Smith, I'd love to hear your comments on this question here.
Yeah, for healing, one of the most valuable training techniques for a prospective healer I've found is the 3 transformations, because it very quickly teaches you what's a mental effect, what's an astral effect, what's a vital physical effect. And then you can dial in how you address it. So if somebody has some weird mental fixation on something, okay, work with mental energy. If there's a lot of sensation associated with it, okay, that's more astral. And if it's more vital in nature, say a torn ACL, well, okay, that's physical. Now, these energies, just like Michael said, propagate through all the different levels of reality. And if you work really hard with one, it can transmute down into another and help with a given problem. But pay attention to what the source of the problem is. Is it mental? Is it astral? Is it vital or physical? And then if it is, try focusing on that. So I'll give a brief story. I was in Afghanistan about 13 years ago. Ran into a gentleman, infantry officer. He had a 95% MRI confirmed tear of his Achilles tendon. Been playing basketball, got hurt. Okay. They were trying to send him home. He wanted to stay with his men. Okay. So I started working with him. I gave him a very basic energy technique to work with it. But I also gave him an herbal formulation known as bone knitting powder. Now, this is a formula you give people who have broken bones or ligament and tendon injuries. He went from a 95% confirmed Achilles tendon tear to 15% in 4 weeks. Now, this was in a 40-year-old smoker living off prepackaged MRE food, getting 4 hours of sleep a night. And when this happened, the supervising surgeon accused him of fabricating the injury because he couldn't believe that something that would normally take 6 months to heal was largely resolved in about 4.5 weeks. And I lost track of him after that. But the kind of point that I'm getting at is, if you can identify the root source of the problem, mental, astral, or vital, then this allows you to dial in on a better treatment protocol for solving the problem. And again, you can overwhelm that by going really strong on a different level of reality, and it will kind of propagate through. But what I tell people all the time is, You know, if you show up on my doorstep with a gunshot wound, for God's sake, go to a hospital. You know, my waving your hands over you is probably going to help on some level, but, you know, go get the bullet taken out and get the tissues sewn back together, and then we'll work on speeding up the healing process of that. And as some people here know, I was an acupuncturist and TCM practitioner for a few years, and you would frequently see people show up who were desperate, you know, that they had a problem and they really wanted help, but they were trying to address it through the wrong modality. You know, if someone shows up and they have a severe case of schizophrenia and just being around them can be dangerous, we're not in an environment where the risk associated to you for working on that is a really good idea if you're the only person trying to help them. So, you know, don't try to smash that square peg into a round hole. You know, try to figure out the root cause of something and go at it from that direction. That's what I would advise most people with the healing process.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I had a family member come to me, had been T-boned in the back. He was sitting in the passenger seat in the back of the car. He's a big, stocky weightlifter, bodybuilder fella, young dude, and he got T-boned, and he came over and he's like, "Oh, bro, can you do some of that healing stuff for me?" Yeah, sure thing, cuzzy. And he gets up and he's like, "Oh yeah, man, this feels great. Oh man, I don't think I'll bother going for the X-ray tomorrow." Nah, bro, no, go get the X-ray, right? You know? And this is the thing. This is like, yeah, I mean, these short-term kind of like very useful and surprising band-aids. You know, you still got to, you know, these things can be limited in scope sometimes, and we need to be realistic about it. Although, hey, I'm always open to surprises, and I've got a whole list of very interesting anecdotes from my time doing this kind of thing.
I'll give you one last short story that people here may find funny. So I was in Thailand. All right. I made the mistake of going to a vegan restaurant that had homemade yogurt. Okay. Got a really bad case of dysentery from that. Okay. So I started using the releasing techniques to make the problem go away. And for 3 weeks, it worked. And every time I'd start to have a problem, I would do that, it would go away. And then one day I was in the middle of practice doing Fajin training with Mark Rasmus, and I kind of lost my focus for a second, and I ended up losing a pair of pants. And so finally at that point, I went to the hospital, and they're like, "Yeah, idiot, you've got amoebic dysentery. Here's some antibiotics to kill the bug." So again, if you need to use a given technique to get over something long enough to get to help, or, you know, what have you, that's great. But just like Michael was pointing out, if you're smoking, you know, 3 packs of fags a day and eating processed food, your health is probably never going to be very good. You might want to work on, you know, not poisoning yourself all the time, and then, you know, you can kind of get around to actually getting better. So, you know, always pay attention to root causes. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, great point, comment there. Okay. All right. Well, let's go for another question, and I'm going to throw this to Victoria. Dun, dun, dun. Knowing what you know now, what would you go back and tell your younger self when you were just starting your journey with initiation into Hermetics?
So I first was introduced to initiation into Hermetics in 2004 when I was 17 years old. And one thing that kind of held me back at the time was my teacher setting really high standards to master step 1, where I had to, and I think I've said this on some other interviews, but where I had to write down in the exact order every thought and every impression I got for 30 minutes. So as a clairsentient, it's not just the thoughts, it's also the impressions and the activity. And I had to master it 30 seconds at a time. Maybe it was up to 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but like that started tripping me up mentally. Because it's like, did I forget everything? And that I could not miss a single thought or impression. So I kind of got hung up in that. but I had exposure to some other IIH training and exercises from other systems that kind of translate into Barden system, like transfer of consciousness or the Godhead. But I kept coming back to Barden over and over again. But I was still holding to my original teacher's advice. And eventually I plugged into the community, started reading other people's approaches. And it's like, for the observation exercise, just focus on establishing the inner observer, rather than this other technique that sure would probably be great for my development, but I was psychologically tripping myself up on trying to perfect that. So if I could go back to my 17-year-old self and start with what I know now, first, I think I'd be a lot further along. But also I would, at the time, I would have started to crowdsource more what other people are doing within Barden. Because I think if you're just relying on the book itself and taking it at face value, it's you might have a lot of unanswered questions. But if you can see, okay, what are other successful magicians in the Barden system doing, even if it isn't what you might interpret from the Barden book, but they are successful and they have a different way of approaching things. Like, I'm not sure if in IIH it says explicitly only establish the inner observer. It says, observe your thoughts, write your thoughts down. But it's like, what is the center of focus? When you get very granular with energy, like, oh, let me be the observer and observing these thoughts rather than focusing on the outcome or the output of observing thoughts and then writing them down. There's a very fine line of details there. So I would say, as Bob mentioned at the first part of this, is focus on proficiency and not mastery. I feel like you have an inner prompt that tells you, okay, I got a good handle on this. I can go to the next step. And as I mentioned, like, really look at what other people are doing, but then come to your own conclusions of, okay, this worked for them. This worked for them. I'm going to use this. This will work. But I also have this other thing that I came up with that I think will work for me as well. And that's it.
Wonderful. Yes. And very, very useful. Thank you so much. Manuela, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
I think the only thing I would tell myself to just have more fun and not be so focused on like perfecting a technique or sitting there for hours and practicing and it's not working. I probably would just say, like, relax, have more fun, and see also the broader picture of, as Victoria said, look at the people that for them it worked, the people for whom it didn't work, where they are, what are they doing differently, and get sort of like feedback from other people that are masters in that are successful, rather than people that think they're masters, but then when you look at their life, they're not really living what they are preaching, or they're not having the outcome from them what they are preaching. But making it short, just have fun.
Wonderful. That's great. And I've got to remind myself too, because I can get quite serious with things, and it's like, like Mark Rasmus says, bless him, like, have fun, you'll have energy all day long. And I found that to be most truthful. And so Michael, please, sir. Now you've been cranking on this for a couple of weeks now, this whole IIH thing, I hear.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, you got to look at it for what it really is. As I said, there's Victoria and Manuela both expressed, you can be discouraged by mastery, as it were. You're going to have to get used to just, because a lot of this work is shooting from the hip. You can be driving along a car and you see a wounded animal. What are you going to do? You can either go there and take its pain away, and send it on, or, you're just asking for its spirit. You're sort of going to be shooting from the hip most of your life. It's not like, I've got to sit down and meditate, get this healing energy in. You're just going to be able to get rhythm. So it's going to be a little bit rough and ready. You're going to be the gunslinger, or, I suppose the maverick, whichever way you look at the energy, you're going to have to get ready for it. I suppose if I look back at myself, I would definitely not spend so much time, just say we used to write the journal down. And even before I even got the book, we were doing it in the School of Inner Knowledge back in the 80s, which is where, incidentally, I kicked off. And you're going to have to get used to, there's going to be all these different emotions that are going to be triggering you through the day. So I'd like to have obviously given myself the advice of like, stick to it. You don't know what you're really getting yourself into. This is the way. This is a really good way, rather than getting discouraged and disenchanted by the many. You're going to get a very, very healthy sense of humor. And even humor and comedy goes through layers. There's this very, very coarse level of humor, what you call toilet humor, and then you go up, and then this, obviously clever wit of sarcasm and things like that. And with the comedy, you get to laugh, and laughter is literally gold. I mean, it's spelt with an L and an AU, and AU is gold. So you look at yourself, and you're going to need this humor. So Hermes is messenger of the gods, and Hermes is where we get hermetics from, and it's that mercurial aspect. So I'm very proud that I did stick to it, and I did get discouraged and went through, I still don't overcome everything every day, but I'm pretty happy I've got through most of my regrets and things like that. One thing is just increase your will to enjoy life, because that's the key. You're going to get opportunities, and if you're in a happy space or content space, you'll pick up on the opportunities. Become like the laughing yoga, just enjoy it, because other things are going to come. People are being born and dying every second, so that's what happens on this planet. Get used to it and enjoy your training. Don't be so critical on yourself. Sure, be direct and enthusiastic, focus. However, you're going to have to learn to laugh and enjoy yourself and come from the heart. That's the big thing that I feel a lot deeper with now, and I'd like to share that as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Oh, so wonderful. Bob, I'm sure you've got a couple of things to share on this for sure.
Victoria and Michael and Manuela all had really, really great points. The only thing I would really add to that is, when it comes to your meditative and yogic development, you're doing the work. And let's be clear about this. You have to practice the techniques, you have to build the skills, all that, right? But you don't need a guru. You don't even necessarily need an official teacher, but talking to other people who know what they're doing can really speed up your progression. I mean, all the time I run into people who take this approach where they can do it all on their own without any kind of outside advice. But by the same token, if you had a friend who walked up to you and said, "Hey, I just bought this really fast sports car. I don't know how to drive. I'm just going to figure it out," you look at them like you're crazy. And, take a kid who doesn't know how to swim. You can throw him in a lake and he'll probably dog paddle enough so that he doesn't drown most of the time. Sometimes he won't. But that same kid's not going to be an Olympic level swimmer without some kind of coach or somebody to help him with just basic technique. Now, use your brain. If somebody's giving you bad advice, it's bad advice. But, look around. Do this thing we call making friends. Get out of your grandmother's basement every once in a while and, follow a guy around for a little bit who knows what he's doing with a particular thing. And then when you've got that, try somebody else. But most of all, just keep going. And as the ladies say, you're going to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince. And with teachers, it's the same deal. And this particularly applies to spirit guidance. Your drunk Uncle Bob who beat his kids was a jerk while he was alive. He didn't get any smarter when he died. So vet any information you get from the other side, because you might be dealing with drunk Uncle Bob instead of the grand master of Kabbalah you think you're dealing with.
That's true.
That's all I really have.
Nice words.
Oh, that's gold. Thank you, Bo. Yeah. All right. Okay. I've got another question from the chat here. Let's put this up, and I'm going to put this one to Michael first. Have you used prayer in your practice?
Not to drunk Uncle Bob, that's for sure. Prayer I've always looked at being like meditation. You're connecting, but once again, we've got such a plethora of beings that we can work with.
Yeah.
And it is, and once again, there's some really strange words in the English language, obviously, when we're working with, Kabbalah, and you're looking at every letter, what it means. And prayer is like pray, birds of prey. And it's interesting, we sort of look up at these old avian beings as they were. Prayer to me is meditation, and it's love, and it's a connection, and it's not like throwing your power away to some invisible entity that, I'll do anything. It's about, if you're asking for someone, particularly if they're passing over, or an animal or a pet or any living force, you're asking for a situation to be healed, or you're manifesting a place. That is a technique of manifestation, meditation. So it's relevant. It's not just, it's just prayer. I'm asking for, my grandmother who's passing over. It's more meditation. Let this being soul move to the next level, if that's relevant within the universal scheme or hierarchy of things. Or that's a big mouthful. That one would just use the love, or that connection to universal divine love or divine providence that is always prevalent there. You can access it at any times. And there are some very, very good teachers of that. So you can move into, a more functional level of, let's say, loving meditation, if that answers the aspect of just prayer, because it's, once again, depending on, the 38,000 divisions of Christianity or Hindu, or, whichever sort of philosophy that someone could be following. I prefer what we're working with now. So it's a loving meditation where someone is passing over, or, we have a loving, a heartfelt connection for life in general, as it were.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I discovered a distinction because I grew up, like many, in a sort of a religious type of background, and prayer was something you did you pray to something. And then I got introduced to this idea that you can just be in a state of prayer. And I had it broken down for me wonderfully by Mark Rasmus, these processes, these 4 steps, giving it an elemental sort of like constituency. And but yeah, when I made that distinction and then I explored that, I found it to be just sitting there it's quite different, actually. It's a very special sort of place that I found for myself by approaching it from a different angle. I'm not praying to something. I'm sitting in a state of prayer, which is it's still something I love exploring. But Manuela, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
I got raised in a sort of religious background as well. So when I initially heard the word prayer, it was like, oh my God, no. Like, you're praying to somebody. So it didn't resonate with me at all. But later I came to the terms that rather than, seeing me pray, or, you see people in the temples pray and bow down and all of this. It's more the state of prayer, as you said as well. You go into your heart and you're really at that compassionate, connected place. And from that, you're stating your intention, you're meditating, or you're interacting. That's how I see it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Victoria.
Great question. I do use prayer in practice, but not, say, for specific set steps. Sometimes it's just generally praying about my spiritual journey. I try to pray every night, but it's not like on my knees at the bed praying. Sometimes it's just as I'm laying down. It's one way for me to connect to divine realms and kind of like tap in with active communication. So rather than kind of like accessing divine realms from a meditation or any magic, it's just one way to kind of for me to be sending messages. and kind of expressing gratitude or sharing the things I'm thinking about or the things I want to sort out. I also grew up in a very religious background. As Michael had mentioned about prayer for being able to heal people, I was raised Mormon, and I knew I was not into the Mormon tradition, but one time I was very sick. And in that tradition, and like medicine wasn't working, my dad had received something called priesthood of the Melchizedek, which is something in that religion. And they had kind of holy blessed olive oil that they would put on you to heal you. And I decided to ask my father to use the Melchizedek priesthood to heal me, even though I didn't have faith in the religion itself. I had faith in power of belief, faith, and also in what it would mean for my father to do that kind of act as well. Or I had a family member who was in a very bad fire accident that should have killed them, but they could feel, and like there went like a prayer group out, and they could feel all these prayers from all these people coming. And that's like the power of prayer to heal and transform. And that person was able to heal and recover and go on, all thanks to a mass amount of people praying. But sometimes I'll, recite the Lord's Prayer. I kind of just want to attune to that energy. Or I also use the Heart Sutra and the Lotus Sutra as forms of prayer as well. They're mantras, they're Buddhist oriented, but I'll use those as prayers sometimes too. So yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And just quickly too, in the system of Reiki, there's an initial sort of like practice what we call gasho, where we bring our hands together like this. And that in itself can act as a switch to move from sort of like the busy beta, brainwave world of, alertness and stuff. And this kind of just like acts as a switch to bring you from the profane into the sacred. And I've noticed that even if I just sit here and just do this and just spend time like this and adjust my posture and just relax and then move into the fascia and start playing around with all these other toys that I found from exploring these things over the years, it's a really sweet spot just by bringing hands together. So this mudra here, if we call it that, very powerful. Bob, sir, I know you've done some travel and you've been to a couple of temples in your time. Please.
I don't use prayer as much as I should. That being said, if you go to John Michael Greer's book, Circles of Power, he has an excellent discussion of the role of prayer in esoteric practice. In a more foundational level, researching the lives of saints pays off a lot. All of these people, men, the women, were people of deep underlying faith. And this is how they worked their miracles. In prayer, if you look at what they were doing in terms of technique, was generally a really big part of what they did. And so don't underestimate, again, the basics. This is, as one of my teachers once said, if you're your own God, that's a pretty sad God. But again, all magicians have big egos, because otherwise, why the hell would we, be here, right? But the point that I'm getting at is, if you look at the greats and you look at their lives and you look at what they were doing, again, all these men and women were people of deep underlying faith. And if that isn't enough to get you to do it, faith underlies akasha. No faith, no akasha. So if you can't be brought to the table by the example of other people, pay attention to the technology. But prayer in particular, particularly when you get overwhelmed, because we're all people, right? And that's going to happen. Prayer and the faith that it generates will carry you through to the other side. And particularly if you have a rough life, it's almost universal. It's a common saying, there are no atheists on the battlefield. And the people who disparage the power of prayer in general, in my experience, are people who've never had their lives truly challenged. They've never been through an illness that almost killed them that they shouldn't have survived. They've never been in a country that fell apart for reasons beyond their control and they had to get the hell out of there. That is a very potent tool, and it doesn't get used often enough. And again, I think part of that is, listen, Barden was a man who grew up in the early part of the 20th century. This was a very different environment than what most of us today live in. Okay. There are a lot of things that went on in that society that were taken for granted that wouldn't even occur to people today. And it's one of the hard things about history is that, if someone was alive 100 years before us, all of those background ideas and concepts that drove their view of the world are largely foreign to us. If you even look at people prior to World War I, this was essentially a pre-modern world. World War I was where, razors were cheap enough so that you could shave, which is why prior to that, lots of guys had big beards, because you wanted to shave, you had to go to the barber. You didn't have that in your house. This was an environment where running water in your house probably wasn't a thing, let alone electricity and cars and all this other kind of business. So in those environments and in those peoples, prayer is a very commonly used tool, but it's been decentralized for a number of reasons in modern society that we can talk about for hours. But I would encourage everybody out there to incorporate that into their practice just a little bit, and you'd be surprised by the effects that's going to have overall. So, for what it's worth.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, I've got to say, once I got over my Jesus allergy, I tell you what, I actually discovered that term in your book, Bob, and I had someone else who's a practicer point that out to me as well, and I was like, going, man, the bro's all good. It's just like how it's been couched to me, and it's put me off a lot of like even looking and considering really valuable things that I've found just great purchase in, because I've sat with them and gone, you know what, I'm going to just disengage any previous bias and sit with this thing and go, wow, this is actually like, man, this is a flavor I wish someone hadn't talked me out of. Really, truly tried it without the bias. Okay, now we're gonna wrap it up in a sec, but I've got one more question from the audience here, and it wouldn't be the same without this one here. I know I'm going to throw this one to Michael, if I could. Michael, this one comes up a bit in the Barden circles about the correct, what you might call the correct progression of the books, or how to approach things. And Bob and I have talked about this in another video, but essentially the question is, would it be beneficial or wise to work with Kabbalah, and I presume the person is referring to KTQ, the third book, early on in the training, or wait until other steps have been completed?
That's an excellent question, and gets asked of me quite a lot, because my training, I didn't get the books till only about 18 years ago, because we're already doing it in the mid 80s when I kicked out of, I was doing martial arts at the time, and esoteric martial arts at that stage. And the way Bill Cook Edwards taught it, this was the School of Inner Knowledge back then, we started doing the work, and within 6 months there was Kabbalistic sounds introduced. I believe the first one I did was the D, dark blue, and when I did that, it changed my entire perspective on the world. Everything is real, it's magic, everything. I believe in everything now, and it's not just like religious aspects, but everything can be real, because I was having so many incredible experiences afterwards. Yes, Barden is absolutely adamant about doing it through IH, through initiation hermetics, and then evocation, and also Kabbalah. However, I do suggest or implore people to maybe go read through those books again, maybe look at things. I mean, obviously Magic Mirror isn't used as much as it is back then it is now, I'm sure, but you understand how to bless the mirror and use it as a device to see into different realms and dimensions. It's not as I said, it's not a 5-minute question, or it's not a 5-minute answer, that's for sure, which I'm very much famous for saying. You look at it, and you're going to have to get really in tune with yourself and think if you're ready for it. Like, once again, you can be discouraged by mastery. However, you need to be encouraged by confidence within yourself. Okay, I got a handle on that. I think that's good. And the way Bill taught it back in the day, he did it out of sequence rather than trying to sort of sit there and go through A, B, C, D that way, or get in there to that you're doing every single technique correct. That would kill you. Even in any system, professional, whatever, you're going to be discouraged by that. You're better off just getting a bit of a handle and coming back and then finding the areas that you're strong in. Now, this is not saying skipping the basics. Get your elemental energy up pretty strong first. I mean, you're doing it every nanosecond of every day anyway. You're going to be in the air, fire, earth, and the water aspects. You're literally carrying those elements with you within every aspect, and it's always changing within your body. So you're going to have to just get good at being comfortable in your skin. All right, I'll practice it, but make sure you're not kidding yourself. Don't do that. However, there's going to be areas of this work you might just focus on a couple of techniques or things that work for you. It's like martial arts or professional magic or any sort of skill sets you might be working with, with kinesiology, or you're an acupuncturist, anything like that. You're going to find areas where these techniques are going to work for you. But to try and go through the whole, it's going to take lifetimes, and you don't necessarily need to have that. You want to just get to the area or feel good in you and get happy in you and go with the things. Yeah, this might not resonate. It's not quite where I'm going. I just keep going, on different areas, and find the areas where you're going to get comfortable in your skin. You're going to be a lot more proficient with yourself. You're going to find the technique, the movement, that, that magic movement that you feel good in. I don't know if I explained that or made you even a little more. What is that? Find the colors and sound that work for you. Find the beings that work with you. Don't try and go too high, because it's a big issue in this work where people, they want to get into the sun sphere. They want to know the powers, of these big, incredible beings. But most people stop at Jupiter, as we say in the Tree of Life. They sort of stop around Jupiter. Saturn stops them. But the outer planets, it's off the charts, the kind of energy those energies are about. All those planets after Jupiter are all etheric or all akashic, and then they've got aspects of earth and fire, air, and water in them. That their knowledge it's phenomenal. You need to have a good solid foundation. Get your home in order first, and go that way. From my experience, anyway, that's my opinion.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's a really great experience, and I want to say too that I just love reading the material, and so even though there's some things I don't practice, I will still familiarize myself with the materials and also the forms, so that I'm almost preparing myself. And when I start doing that, sometimes I get a nod of encouragement. Let's just call it that. Like, oh, yeah, I'd like you to pay a little bit more attention to this, and it seems legit. Okay, let's follow that thread. Would anyone else like to comment on this? I'll just throw it out into the audience, into the panel.
All right, we're going to hell now, because everybody knows I'm on the pro Kabbalah tip.
Yeah.
Okay. For what it's worth. All right. Mark Rasmus pulled the quarterback sneak on me and my friends when we were studying with him, because he taught the elements as Kabbalah, sight, sound, and color from day one. Okay. I remember the first time I worked with elemental water, because I was very unbalanced. It felt like somebody was stabbing me in the liver with a knife for about 5 minutes. Now, these things pass, all right, but you have to have the internal fortitude to kind of keep going. Kabbalah to me is where the magic really hits the road. Up until that point, most people are working with things at a mental level. You can kind of delude yourself that, oh, hey, these are all aspects of my own mind, or, whatever. Okay. But when you start vibrating that sound and color and sensation through your body, through your ligaments and tendons and all this other kind of business, and things start happening, you now have to make a choice. There's this doorway you're about to walk through. All right. And once you walk through that doorway, you can't walk back. A lot of people run away. I mean, every time I've gone to magic camp, there's invariably been one or two guys or ladies who show up for a couple days, and then they just, boom, they're gone. Never to be seen again. because, you know, they wanted the fantasy of Lord of the Rings. They sure as hell didn't want what it actually means. So, you know, one of my strongest students, I've talked about him a lot, took off to Tanzania, did rebound, hired a bunch of Maasai warriors on the beach, hired these guys, did 3 to 5 hours of rebounding a day while running the Kabbalistic energies for like 180 days. I mean, this guy's an animal. You know, couldn't sleep, you know, was hallucinating half the time. Everybody here knows who he is. Yeah, I know. You know, burning out his practice partners left and right, you know. But again, at the end of it, it transformed him. And he actually apologized to me because I'd walked him through all the letters 6 months previously. And he was like, you know, I thought you were making all this stuff up. And I'm like, no, this is how it works. You just couldn't do it. And that's the benefit of Kabbalah. Also keep in mind, all right, reality check here, guys, okay? Depending upon who you ask, this ball above head method with Kabbalah that we use, there may be 300 or 400 people worldwide who do this. And at least 20% of those people have been trained by either Bill Edward Cook, Michael, Mark, or me. All right. It's a small club. If you want to work magic, guys, this is the jam right here. All right. But like anything else, it's going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to take a while. And you're going to have to put real effort into it. And if you half-ass it, pardon my language, it's going to hand you your ass back. You know, that's the way this stuff works. And once you start working with the Akashic forces, brother, game over. I mean, that's just gonna, yeah, okay, you're imagining fire and air and la-di-da. And then, you know, now you start working with the Akashic forces and you're sitting in your house eating your Cheetos and drinking your beer, and all of a sudden something shows up in a corner and you're like, the hell was that? You know, so I'm pro Kabbalah, all right, but admittedly, you are jumping into the deep end of the pool with this stuff, and you might not be able to swim back to shore. That's kind of where I'm going with that.
Great response, thank you, Bob. I always enjoy that particular take on things. Would anyone else like to jump in on this? Please, Victoria.
I'll add a little and give a bit of plug for Bob. He can add commentary after if he wants. But I walked through Kabbalah letters with Bob via the ball above head method. And some of his students were in the early training of IAH. But Bob's system makes it very easy to do. So we hear about the dangers about working with Kabbalah prematurely. But the way Bob has it set out is that even if you're very basic in your development, the way he has you working with him at each level of reality and the clearing method he has before and after is not going to cause, from what I've seen, any negative effects or side effects. So, I mean, plug for Bob. If you want to work with Kabbalah letters early, you can look at one of his Kabbalah classes. Also, if you just want to kind of dabble and you're curious, maybe try like the ball in front of you and see if you can generate a ball of energy, you know, with a certain color, sound, sensation for a letter. You know, that can develop your clairsentient skills, which are very important to be able to identify different energy signatures, especially as a magician, so you can understand the different inputs coming at the different levels of reality and identifying what they are. But also if you get a kind of tangible taste and touch of what the different letters are, you may observe them kind of happening as phenomena in the world to some extent. So as you kind of expand your own dictionary of energy signatures, like Kabbalah energy signatures is something to use as well. But I want to share that thing about the ball, creating the ball. Kind of too, that can be kind of a basic approach you can try, and then just charge it. And that way, if you're really concerned, you know, you're not running it through anything. You know, you can be doing it outside and then turn it up to the sun or whatever, or imagining it dissolving into light.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And now, when have we covered this? We're all good now? I'm pretty sure. Yep, cool. Okay. Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up. And I'm going to say, first of all, whew, man, legendary. And what a great lineup of people. So much great conversation here. I didn't really even get to the questions I came up with, which is awesome. So I am so grateful to the audience for bringing all the questions, all the interactivity. But yeah, I want to say thank you to all the panel here, and obviously our two new guests, Manuela and Michael. Such depth of knowledge, wisdom, width, range, and girth, length. Hang on, yeah, all of that. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you to you both for coming in, and should one of these things fire off again, and there's a good chance it will, I will certainly be reaching out to you again. But I want to say, before we say harera, as we say sometimes, I want to just say, where can people find you, Michael and Manuela? I've got a website here for Michael, being michaelsalchemy.com. Is that you're pretty active there? Is that a good spot?
It has been in the past. However, Manuel and I have now got we're working a lot through the social media, definitely just on Facebook. You'll find us, we're doing the psychic skills development program. That kicks off tomorrow, and it's very, very good for the intermediate level. It's perfect, actually. I mean, if you're a beginner and you feel compelled to get into this, obviously that is very, very good. We're kicking it off Australian time at around the 9 a.m. I believe.
9 a.m. Brisbane time.
Yeah.
But the Michael's Alchemy is I guess a platform that needs updating.
Yeah.
So Facebook at the moment might be a better way of staying up to date. We're in the process of creating another website. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got intermediate classes coming up every month, and it's very, very good, because it was a big thing that we felt was like lacking. People were going for the high end stuff, and then was okay, we need a lot of chunks. So we finished the protection workshops. People learn about the 5-point star, 6-point star, obviously, that Barden talks about as well. Plus, we used a lot of different modalities, so people actually got to feel what that was about. But also, through the elementals. That was our second workshop. We did the elements, so people could build the elements within their body as well, physically, mentally, mentally, as well as akashically. We're also bringing in June the planes, dimensions, and spiritual beings, so people get a foundation work where they get to feel or see not just that they're finding their spirit guides or their soul line, but also types of beings in the realms, because everything becomes quite real. There's everything from centaurs or satyrs or minotaurs, or there's also a lot of the different energy forces of powerful beings, and also lesser, lower astral beings, so they can get a bit of discernment about that. That would be very, very helpful. And also getting back to protection is the big one. A lot of people sort of need to build that in their energy field. So we're going just from the spheres into the toroidal field. So they're getting 4-dimensional spherical work. So they're breathing it in psychically. We're teaching them how to spherically breathe, and build the energy within their body as well as around their mental, astral, and material world. So they're literally breathing in the colors and sounds that are needed. Obviously, we're not doing the cabala at that level yet. They're just working with the solid basics and integrating it into their own bodies. So they've got a strong, healthy mind and emotional body, as well as a physical health aspect. So they're really building the energy to the tips of their fingers and the tips of their toes. So yes, see us on Facebook, and you'll see the Psychic Skills Development Program. It kicks off tomorrow. It's an 8-day program, and if you miss it, we'll send you the videos as well. All right, so check us out on Facebook. Okay, Michael Lamb and Manuela Hecht.
The surname that's hard to pronounce.
Yes. Is there anything else you'd like to say with that?
Yeah, just Manuela, and Hecht is spelled Hecht, but you will find me on Michael's Facebook as well. So
yeah, it's a great program. Getting good reviews.
And soon the new website will be ready, hopefully.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I'd just like to quickly put in, as well as the plug, absolutely wonderful. Check out the course, guys. Michael Lamb and Manuela on Facebook. Have you got some short, sharp, succinct final words for the audience?
Absolutely, yes. Stay elemental. Yes, work with your elements, get with your basics, and it was a very, very inspiring panel of folks here. You've got Bob and Victoria both, working with the high extremes plus from the basics. Also, very honest and loyal folks to the work, which is really awesome to see. And everyone out there, just stay strong within yourself. It's going to come from the heart. It creates a much larger field than your mind. Your mind's phenomenally powerful, but compared to your heart, your soul is powerful. But tapping right into the spirit, that real akasha of things. You're infinite. So that's my words of advice. Stay strong
and have fun.
And laugh. Don't take it too serious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm just going to pass it round to Bob and Victoria. So, Bob, have you got anything you'd like to finish up with, sir?
Sure. For all the teenage boys out there, the Kabbalistic energy of annoyance is a lemon yellow color that's floating and airy, and it's got the sound of circus music in the background. Now, if this spontaneously causes you to get slapped in the face, well, that's your fault. But I'll throw that out there. That being said, in all seriousness, be careful what ritual systems and egregores you get connected up to, because those things are really hard to shake. That's going to be a topic of the discussion that we have with Mark Stavish next week. It's
better plug that one.
Typically stuff you can just plug into and walk away from.
Yeah.
That being said, anything I'm up to, 60skills.com, the Facebook page, perseusarcaneacademy, of course. And no matter how much you love me, go out and check out these other wonderful people, because they all have unique takes on what they do based off their experiences. And contrary to popular belief, I am not the master. I'm just a monkey punching on God's keyboard, randomly hitting buttons. And that's, kind of about as far as I can go in terms of a master plan. So please reach out, talk to other people, learn other things, come to your own conclusions. And of course, have fun. But if you get slapped in the face, it's your fault.
I just got to share that little emoji down the bottom. Beautiful. I love it. Victoria, any final words?
I'm kind of at a loss for words, but I'll try to ramble. I would be a little bit serious and grounded, as I usually am, but thanks to everyone else kind of making the energy lighter, I'll try to be light. So, just enjoy it, as they said, and kind of figure out your framework, what you want to do within magic. There's so many different systems, things you can do. So, don't take anything as gospel. There's a lot of other systems that are complementary to Barden. So find what works for you, what you can integrate in. But also realize, time on earth is short, as Michael mentioned earlier. So really, enjoy it. Think about, what do you want to do here? What is your higher self's purpose? What goals? What do you want to achieve? When you're on the other side, you look back on your life and it's like, okay, what did I do? What can I be proud of? So enjoy it, travel if you can, do things that you enjoy, sit out and be present with your cup of coffee or tea, listen to some fun music and dance by yourself in your living room. That's it. Thank you for having me, Manuela and Michael. It's a pleasure to meet you. I've been seeing you on Facebook.
You too, Victoria, and Bob too. Awesome. It's been great. Meet you guys.
Thank you.
Well, yeah. By the way, Phil, Joe Walsh was just in Queenstown. The Joe Walsh. Yeah. I think he was just playing at the bars, and all these musicians were there. The Joe Walsh from the Eagles. So, oh my gosh.
Funny you say that. So Joe Walsh apparently had a very meaningful. He had a very meaningful experience, and I think it was in Tauranga, up here in the North Island, and he's got a fondness for New Zealand. He had a special experience here. I can't recall exactly what it was, but yeah, little old New Zealand. We get a lot of big acts down here, but they come in under the radar and play at like little orchards and wineries and things. I don't want all the
Exactly. I know, that's crazy.
Stay in the forest.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. Well, I just want to say, man, this has just been so cool. Like, you know, and I tell you what, I'm already formulating and conniving a cabala conversation with a few people now, because even the fact you brought up that letter D that Bill Cook Edwards brought up with straight off the bat,
Oh,
man,
God, yeah. Changed my life. Yeah.
That's a real time thing for me at the moment. Just quietly, he says on YouTube. But I can see.
Can you say it a little bit louder so the JGB can hear? Yeah, it's an oldie but a goodie. I've used. Oh my God, that was a life changer. We should put this group back. We're putting the band back together, man. It's back together. It was profound. That was incredible. I did that experience and put it through my whole being, just like from the blood just coming down. And like I stood up and I felt like a giant. I'd never felt that at a very young age, and that was a life changer for me, game changer. You know, game on, man. Yeah.
And I just want to say too that, you know, a long time exposure to, say, the Reiki egregore, because it's largely, in my view, occupied by a lot of feminine energy, that can have a feminizing effect. And so I'm wandering off here, and sorry, I do want to stitch things up, but I've got to say there's some I feel like these letters are almost like vitamins, and you can get deficiencies in certain vitamins, and these things really sort of top up tanks that you didn't even know existed or you weren't aware of.
Two quick things to add. Fellas, the quickest way to become completely repellent to all women is to run a lot of letter J. They want the D. Okay. That being said, all right, we'll leave that there. So far, we've got a pretty good representation of the colonial club here between Brits, Kiwis, Australians, and Americans. But we need to get a Canadian into the group to like round out the energy. So, consider that.
All right. I know.
Energy.
Awesome. Well, okay. I better stitch this up, otherwise we're going to keep going. And this has been
September. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I woke up in Invercargill. Yeah. I want to say thank you, everybody. This has been so much fun. I feel very blessed, and I'm so grateful for the quality of the people, the lightheartedness, the certain important things were pointed out, lots of techniques, so many gems and valuable items, and I actually just can't wait for the next one, to be honest. So I'll be in touch, but just to say thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone in the audience and for all the wonderful questions. And I'm gonna end the stream in about 10 seconds, and then it's going to go straight to YouTube, and then I'm going to put an audio podcast up and all the deets and the descriptions and everything like that. So listeners, there's replayability and re-listenability with this, I think. So once again, have a beautiful, beautiful day, week, wherever you are in the world. And I appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The body.